Here we are. We are streaming now. Here we are. Looking awesome while we're streaming. What a weekend, eh? What a weekend. It is absolutely true what Lenin said, that there are decades where weeks happen and weeks where decades happen. And this weekend was pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. From a personal note, right? It was just a busy Thanksgiving weekend for the capitalist job. Busy, just working, right? Throwing myself into it, I really understand, and especially as I'm getting older and I'm really just accepting my lot in life. Eric, a pleasure to see you as always. Because I'm just kind of accepting my lot in life. I really see how people can lose themselves to their work and lose themselves to capitalism. You just need to accept that this is it. This is your job and this is what you do and this is who you are. You define yourself this way. And then you are what you are. Jehovah Sanctus Unus. Did you watch that documentary? I got halfway through the documentary, my man. It's good. A lot of information that I knew, right? It's a great... we're talking now about the Everything is a Rich Man's Trick documentary. And I'm going to finish it up. I'm going to wrap it up. I have limited time. That's all it is, dude. Capitalism eats the most of my life, and I can only really spend so much time living in this kind of space while trying to also deal with my own life, right? But capitalism is a rich man's trick. It's got a lot of it's a good source for a lot of dense information. There's a lot in there, like going through the history of the lead up to World War II. Finally, a documentary that actually focuses on the capitalist industrialist side of World War II. Very often when you talk or hear about World War II, it's from the perspective of military personnel and the military decisions that were made. But this documentary is no, there were capitalist industrialists who funded this war. Where did the money come from? Who was in support of this? It goes through, for example, Henry Ford's support of the Nazi war machine and that kind of thing. How he received the Iron Cross for his support of the Nazis. And of course, any documentary that actually talks about the Rothschilds seriously is a good documentary. My only critique is I just wish he wasn't using words like Illuminati or even elite. Right? Even the elites, those sorts of phrases that I understand are ways to signal to the in crowd that this is what we're talking about. But I think that purging our language of any conspiracy theory style of discussion, like the Illuminati, you just don't need to use it. It's not a real thing that exists, right? It's just like a conspiratorial, the Illuminati. So it's one of those things where, but that's a very minor critique. And there are certain times where he starts talking about stuff it's factual, and I'm I think I might need to see a source for that. But yeah. I think that that's probably where I'm going to land, Eric, ultimately, is that I don't think the claim about JFK is that, the whole mafia being tied in and all of this kind of stuff. And the moment that I started to get a little bit okay, come on, man, was when he was talking about JFK was an honest man. Good, honest man, JFK, right? And I'm come on, man. We were all there for the Cuban Missile Crisis. And, we were, it's... JFK certainly had opposition, but he to pretend as though he's this good, honorable, upstanding gentleman amongst thieves is sort of odd, frankly. He's another one, right? He's another politician. So I am going to finish it, but I gotta. There's a lot of really good information in there. I'll definitely say that there's a lot of good information there, and like the JFK assassination is interesting. It's because the truth is that we don't actually know what happened. Like that, I think is true. I really don't buy into this lone gunman story. I think that that's true, and just like typically the people who do that kind of thing, who actually go and shoot a person as a lone gun, I'm a lunatic, haha, bang bang, right? They want people to know that that's what they've done, right? Like the fellow that shot John Lennon. Like the fellow that shot John Lennon, he wanted people to know that he had done it. And Oswald, I don't think wanted people, like he said himself that he was the patsy. Like I don't buy into the lone gunman story, and I think that that's but I think that's as far as I'm willing to go. I haven't seen anything that convinces me. Like the array of conspiracy theories that I have heard surrounding the JFK assassination is now the mafia, the CIA, the Cubans, and like I feel like at this point you could make like a really cool movie where there was like all of those forces converging and getting in on each other and like stumbling all over one another, right? And that like the first shot was done by the mob, and then the second shot was done by the Cubans, and the third shot was done by the CIA. I've even heard like a really one of my favorite theories comes out of the oh come on, those boys. Come on, those boys, the leftist boys who have their own podcast, and Matt Chrisman is part of them. I'm blanking on their names. You guys will let me know. And they talked pretty largely about the JFK assassination, and their general consensus was that there obviously was an assassination attempt, but it was probably that the CIA botched it, that they were looking to maybe spook JFK or maybe get involved, and then they just fucking botched the shit out of it because they're stupid. And that to me is just as concrete as anything else. That like somebody went to that like one of the shots was literally like the security guard like going to get his gun and misfiring into the president, right? And that's an interesting observation all on its own, CH. Yeah, of course, CIA got Kennedy killed one way or another. Like, whether it was incompetence, whether it was intentional, like these sorts of questions. And the fact that they're not releasing a lot of documentation and the fact that they're not releasing a lot of stuff is very suspect. But again, I suspect that that's being done to avoid embarrassment more than anything, right? That, like, I think that there's so much intrigue and so much interesting stuff surrounding that event, and people want to know. And of course, the power structure, like what people should be condemning the institution for is its lack of transparency. That to me is the one thing that you can be like, yeah, this is opaque, and it's being opaque on purpose, and it's obviously being opaque on purpose. And that to me is something to condemn. That when assassinations happen and when these sorts of things happen, you want the full light of day. You want full-scale investigations. You want people to know what's going on and who is where and all of this kind of stuff. And you want to release that to the public, and you want the public to know. And the fact that they're not doing that, the fact that there is all of this obfuscation, the fact that there's all of this like petty politics still going on today, like literally, what is it now? Like straight up 60 years after the fact. It tells you a lot about our country, and it tells you a lot about what's going on, that people are still in this space of like mistrust, and that the government is doing everything it can to show you that you should mistrust it, right? Yeah, the Illuminati, I think, is starting to fade as well. Good to see you, Methane. Just Me, good to see you as well. Mikhail, good to see you guys. Good to see all of you. This is great. It's so wonderful that you guys are always here. I hit record and you guys come on in and we get to talk about the crazy stuff that's going on in the world. And right now, there's crazy stuff going on in the world. there is one documentary that I'm on the hunt for. Is ballistic testing over JFK. I only saw the ads for it once, and when I tried to record it, it was scrubbed from the airways. The ballistic evidence shows that he was shot from one of the Secret Services. Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. You have an active shooter situation. The one thing that I think really shies me away from believing that it's a CIA assassination, like a genuinely, like, we're the CIA, we're going to plan an assassination, here's an assassination. There's two reasons for that. Reason number one, like, what convinces you that the CIA can pull this off when they can't get Castro, right? Like, so Castro is like this iron shield that the CIA can't get access to, but Kennedy somehow is just like this easy to get target. And then also, like, talk about, like, doing the most dangerous thing that you could probably do. Like, the idea that the CIA and the people involved in the CIA planned, orchestrated, and executed this assassination and then got away with it scot-free, no whistleblowers, no planned evidence, no nothing. Like, it's just a little too difficult for me to swallow. It's just a little bit too difficult for me to be like, I don't think so. Like, it just seems a little, and there's so much, like, I can picture some CIA guys being like over beers talking about it, but the idea that they would actually move forward with it's not like political suicide or professional suicide. It's like literally they could be hung for treason, you know? It's like that kind of level of suicide. And I just have a really, really tough time believing that nobody would come out and, like, discuss it. You know what I mean? Yeah, and there's a theory that Khrushchev planned it, right? Like, and that it's just like, so the ongoing theories that it might possibly be is Khrushchev, Fidel Castro, the CIA itself, the mob, or just some random guy. You know? So it is one of those things where I just don't know that we'll ever actually know. Yeah, liberals are in full Deus Volt mode right now. Yeah, dude, they totally are. Like, that's absolutely the truth. Compton, good to see you too, my man. Yeah, these last few days, this is what we're going to be talking about, guys. Like, if you look, I've got all of this. This is what we are going to be talking about. Once I get through my own personal shit, once I get through this is absolutely worth to put up, right? Yeah, and as if I think is also hitting something interesting about the JFK assassination. I don't know why we're suddenly talking about the JFK assassination, but it's fine. Just let's ease into the conversation about Gaza, eh? Let's just ease into it. We don't need to plunge head first, right? The thing about the JFK assassination is, who cares? Even if he was a good guy, he wasn't. Nothing fundamentally changed. Yet he didn't threaten the establishment, the result of internal squabbles. I mean, I do think that you could make the argument that the Cold War would have played out a little bit differently. That JFK was talking about Russia differently than his contemporaries. And he was saying, like, why don't we try to work with the Russians? You know, he was kind of more like that. But not like that to the degree where he was going to be like, we're best buddies and we're the friends of the world, you know? So, like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm most freaked out about the people calling for the total genocide of the Palestinians. Yeah, like, 2023 has been the mask-off year. I'm going to call it now, right? 2023 is the year of the mask-off. That Canada is honoring Nazis in Parliament. The Ukrainian crisis has become, like, explicitly Nazi, and is going to become more so for sure. What other kind of crazy nonsense? This whole situation where it's literally like the Palestinians managed to get the most successful attack against their oppressors, Israel, in the history of the conflict, right? It's the first time that the Gazans, that the Palestinians gained ground, right? They actually broke through. They actually took territory, right, for the first time. It is being declared as one of the largest failures of intelligence, probably in the history of the West. Do I have that? And because 500 rockets were fired. Oh, hey, comrade, we got a guy on Twitch here, John F. McDropout, love that name. Oh, hey, comrade, I called it Mask Off 2022, but it seems to be carrying on. Yeah, we're in a mask off period, bud, and I could see the argument for 2022. Like, Nazis being honored in Parliament, for me, is a big checkpoint for Canada. That, like, they all stood up and they knew he was a Nazi. I will never, ever believe anything other than that. Like, just basic, like, if somebody were to stand in front of me and say, they couldn't possibly have known, I'd be like, oh, it's good to know that the Parliament has less planning than, like, your cousin's wedding. You know? Like, there's absolutely no way that Huncombe gets into that seat and nobody knows he's a Nazi. There's no chance. 0%. And the idea that we're, like, the fact that they're even trying to pitch it at us just tells you how stupid they think we are, or how willing we are. And I think this situation with Gaza has now sort of shown you that it's about willfulness, that it isn't actually about stupidity. It's about willfulness. It's about being willingly stupid. That yeah, it's obviously stupid. The narrative is obviously stupid, but who cares, right? Because we're Nazis. That's what it's about now. It's about being a Nazi. And the liberals are showing pretty clearly, right? And our political establishment is showing pretty clearly that we're pro-Nazi, right? That Zionism is a form of Nazism, and we support that, right? And the narratives that are coming out are willfully stupid. That there's a lot of, like, I talk a lot about the worship of money, the trifecta, right? The unholy trinity of the capitalist death cult, and that trifecta is the worship of money, the worship of the self, and I've been calling it the worship of. I've been waffling on the third point because I've been trying to find a good way to talk about it, but I think I am just going to go back to the worship of ignorance, the worship of stupidity, because it's a willful stupidity. Like, if you are actually trying to convince me that nobody knew that Hunka was a Nazi, I think you're being willfully stupid. I think you're being dumb on purpose. In order to defend your team, in order to defend yourself and defend your culture and defend Western civilization, right? You gotta be stupid to believe it, or you've got to be willing to be stupid. You know, so because it's a very stupid argument. The worship of the comfortable delusion. I've used that one before too. The worship of illusion, the worship of delusion. But honestly, man, like, the reality is as stupid as right. That's the problem. Is that it's the most accurate. It's the most accurate. Is the worship of stupidity, and the problem with that, of course, is that it's insulting, and that opens up the opportunity for critics to dismiss me because always just saying people are stupid. But the problem is that it's accurate. That's the issue, is that it's the most accurate thing to say. Because it's not worshiping illusions. It's not worshiping ignorance even. It's not worshiping the team. It's not worshiping any of that. It's stupidity. It's intentionally stupid. That you're being intentionally dumb. And the people who are in support of what's going on here in terms of this situation are being intentionally stupid. Like, you can if you look at something like this, like I've got here, I think I need to, can I zoom this out? Yeah, this is great. I've got this this is from Al Jazeera, just a brief history, right? Just a brief history of the region. This is what is currently today called Israel, right? 1917 to 1939, the British Mandate's main objective was to place historic Palestine under political, administrative, and economic conditions that would secure the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. Before the British Mandate in Palestine, Jews made up 3% of the total population, right? So we just move along with this. And this line's going. It's going to go to 1939, which we can skip to. The British mandate, so that 1939 to 1945, the British mandate facilitated Jewish immigration from Europe to Palestine in the 1920s and 1930s. By 1947, the Jewish population had increased tenfold to 33%. Right? These gray areas now are the Jewish population. Land control, Arabs control 95% of the land, Jews control 5% of the land. Right. So this is by 1947. So here's 1946. In 1946, Zionist Jews controlled less than 6% of historic Palestine. And then 1947, the UN in 1947 proposed a plan that would grant 55% of historic Palestine to a Jewish state and 45% to non-contagious Arab one. Jerusalem would get special international status. Palestinians rejected the proposal, obviously, because it stripped away much of the land that was under their control. At the time, they owned 94% of historic Palestine and comprised 67% of the population. Onward we go. 1947 to 1949. On May 14th, 1948, the day the British mandate expired, Zionists declared the State of Israel to be born. Zionist military forces expelled at least 750,000 Palestinians, destroyed over 530 villages, and captured 78% of historic Palestine. The remaining 22% was divided into two parts, the West Bank and Gaza Strip. In 1949, the UN welcomed Israel as a member state. No Palestinian state ever materialized. And then on this goes until 1967. In June 1967, Israel expanded into the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, occupying all of historic Palestine. This has made the Israeli occupation the longest in modern history. And of course, these lines just showing remaining Palestinians in Israel, a steady increase. Of course, here's the line of the Jewish population, the population going up here. 1993, PLO leader Yasser Arafat signed the Oslo Declaration of Principles with Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. The future negotiations were supposed to determine which areas Palestinians would control within the 22% of historic Palestine that Israel occupied in 1967. And then in 1995, so 1994 to 2014, Palestinians were given certain powers of self-rule in urban parts of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. However, Israel maintains security control and the ability to raid at any time. And this is just one article. This is just one very simple, straightforward thing that you can see the very briefly. Even today, Palestinian national aspirations remain elusive. Throughout historic Palestine, Palestinians face occupation and colonization, siege and war, and discrimination and second-class treatment from Israeli rule. Additionally, millions of Palestinian refugees languish in camps awaiting their right to return to their home. And the response to, and of course, so if you're experiencing this, you have the right to fight back. You have the right to fight back, right? That's just very straightforward. If you are experiencing, if somebody kicks in your door and tries to kidnap you or your children or tries to kill you, you have the right to defend yourself. And what the Palestinians are experiencing is absolutely worth. They are absolutely allowed to defend themselves, without a shadow of any doubt. That if you think otherwise, it is because you are either completely complicit, i.e. you're a fucking Nazi, or you're stupid. You just don't know what's going on, right? And at this point, you have to insist on being stupid. You have to say, I am going to remain stupid. I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to know anything. And you've just got to stay in this mindset of saying, I am just going to accept my illiteracy. Maybe illiteracy is the better thing to say. The worship of illiteracy. Because I do think that there is something about, like... I really struggle with this third point. There's something eluding me. There's a word that exists in the English language to encapsulate the idea. As simple as saying the worship of money or the worship of the self. And it's just kind of like... It's just effervescent. It's just not quite there. And maybe the worship of illiteracy is right. Because it is like, not only do people not want to know, they don't want to know. Like, not only don't they know, they don't want to know. And they're proud of how they don't know. To the point now where, like, the people who are in favor of what's going on in Israel are pro, and the language that we should be using is pro-genocide. That we are anti-genocide and they are pro-genocide. And that to me is the language that we actually should use. That we are anti-genocide and they are pro-genocide. And when we talk to these people, we should be asking them, so why are you pro-genocide? Because they are pro-genocide. Like, this is a genocide. There's no, how do you possibly say it's anything other than a genocide, given what you see very clearly. Like, it's impossible to deny. Where's the... Like, I like it when it's all laid out as clearly as this. When it's laid out as clearly as this, like, this is a genocide, right? From Twitch, John writes, fascism loves its myths at the expense of its history. Maybe just because you have to work so hard to be ignorant, the word seems almost inadequate to convey the effort. Ignorance just seems easy. Willful maintenance of ignorance takes hard work, community effort, and some level of determination. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And we are more than willing to do it as a people. Like, our prime minister honored a Nazi in parliament, and people are just like, oopsie-doos. Like, oopsie-doos. And people believe that. Like, people go along with that. Just like, I guess it was just a big fart joke. Oh well, we vetted a Nazi less than you would vet your cousin inviting a friend to a wedding. like, Larry, yeah, no, you can't get into that territory. I feel you though, bro. I feel you. Illiteracy is what all the cool kids are doing. Yeah. Obtuse. Yeah. Intentional obtuseness. Like, it's like all of these things, right? It's intentional illiteracy, it's intentional stupidity, intentional obtuseness. Other words I shall not repeat on stream, but like it's this combination of things that, like, and there's got to be a word that encapsulates this total, like, playing dumb. Playing dumb, yeah, pretense of ignorance, feigning ignorance, willful ignorance, deliberate ignorance, playing dumb, faux naivety, strategic ignorance, selective ignorance, ignorance by design, tactical stupidity, yeah. All the Grinning Guys is really hitting it here, where it's like this collection of just like pretending as though history began today, right? Oh my God, did you hear that the Palestinians invaded Israel? They're so evil because I just know about what's happening today. And literally, like, you can look at a graph, like, here it is, easy to find, takes 2 seconds, right? Super easy, right? You literally type into Google, Israel-Palestine history, and boom, it's all over the place. Impossible to ignore. You just have to be like, tactical stupidity is a great phrase, yeah? Willful ignorance of the suffering of others, especially your own citizens, is a kind of evil, regardless of what the cause is, stupidity or malice. Yeah, I mean, it's like, and there is like a kind of malice about it too, isn't it? Yeah, obtuse just means you dull learning, not that you actively invent bullshit reasons to keep doing the same shit you know is wrong and has bad results. Definitions are permanently impermanent. Words evolve. And the reason why I started talking about it is in terms of like the worship of the team, or the worship of your side, right? The worship of your group, like the worship of your of the in group, right? Is because the act of playing dumb or the act of being stupid is in protection of your in group, right? That's the reason I started talking about it that way, because we like it's gotten so clear that what is if you just sit down and watch Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, right? If you just watch Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, it's immediate in 10 minutes. Like 10 minutes. It takes no time at all. And you're just like, oh yeah, that's a fucking genocide. Like there's just no argument to be had. It's not complex. It's like super, super easy to understand. Like it's made complex intentionally in order to obfuscate. And I think the reason why I want to actually stray away from this intentional stupidity or this intentional kind of thing is that that's just an act. That's just a thing people are doing, and there's a underlying reason why they're doing it, right? There's an underlying reason why they're acting that way, and it's to protect the system. It's to protect their society or their civilization, right? It is like the worship of capitalism itself, that we're doing it so it's okay, and we have to play dumb to the obvious evil of it, or else it will be revealed that it is obviously evil. Like we've got to actually pretend that it's change the language all you want. The process of actively using intellect to deny and avoiding learning is still going to happen, and it's going to do immense harm. Yeah, when I think of the sort of idea, the first word that comes most often is actually delusional, but I don't like it, and I'm not sure I would recommend it. Well, and it's important to remember, like, a big reason why I'm struggling with this third point and this third prong is that I don't want it to be alienating, right? I want it to be accessible. I want it to be something that people could look at and be like, okay, let's hear what this guy has to say. And if you say stupidity, ignorance, illiteracy, obtuseness, that is alienating. And people will just be like, oh, this guy's just insulting us. He's not actually trying to observe and all that, regardless of how accurate it is, right? And that's why I've sort of pivoted to this worship of the team or worship of the side or worship of that kind of thing. And it's... Anyway, this conversation is forever and ongoing, right? Maybe it is the worship of gaslighting. Like, maybe it is. Maybe it is like this like gaslighting. It's going to come together. One day it's going to crystallize, right? It's going to crystallize, and we're all going to go, that's what it is, right there. This forming thing. Or maybe there is just like a word that we will all invent together. That it's just like, but it definitely is gaslighting. Like we have major cultural forces that are committed to this gaslighting, right? We have major cultural forces that are like Trudeau, Poilievre. The NDP released a statement in support of the genocide. So all of the major political parties are pro-genocide at this point. That they all agree. Killer on Twitch says free Palestine. Absolutely, my man. Free Palestine. All of the major political parties in Canada are pro-genocide, right? They are explicitly pro-genocide, that they look at the genocide that is happening in Israel, the historical genocide that has been unfolding for decades now. And they all say, we absolutely need to support the genociders, which is Israel, condemning expressions of support for Hamas. Do we have an exact quote? Canada unequivocally and in the strongest possible terms condemns these terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas. We stand with Israel and reaffirm our support for Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international law. And this is a guy who called a peaceful protest in Ottawa a group of Nazis, himself saluting and supporting Nazis, or a Nazi in Parliament, shut down their bank accounts, right? So what's he going to start doing to the people who are showing their support for Palestine? Right, there are people on the streets who have been protesting and who have been showing their support, waving the Palestinian flag. Is he going to shut their bank accounts down too? Is he going to shut their bank accounts down too? He's done it before, right? Like, what kind of action is he willing to commit to? If he's in the strongest possible terms, he's condemning it, right? So how much longer until this means lockdown for people? Like, if you go out in the street with a Palestine flag, are you going to get locked down? Right? That's what he's opened up. That's what he's willing to do. He's done it before. Maybe the worship of intelligence is as dangerous as the worship of stupidity. Well, especially like if you're one of those people who like you think you're smart, but you're not. Like Peterson, right? He thinks he's very smart, but he's not. So it's like the definitions are fundamental and not negotiated. Constraints create definitions, not people, but the problems people have to describe. Oh, I see. This is an ongoing conversation you guys are having. You know what, guys? I actually have to take a break very, very swiftly. I just have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Sorry about that. I started working out again over the weekend, and I've been drinking so much water. It's crazy. Killer writes, I was on Wicked Ricky's stream, and I just said, I don't know who this is, said Free Palestine. She blocked me out of the chat for 3 seconds. Yeah, what happened to freedom of speech? Yeah. Like, no, we are definitely... You're welcome, Lou. We are definitely getting to the point where we are, like, you're simply not going to be able to say these things anymore, right? Like, your freedom of speech is going to be gone. Yeah, it is all Nazism. The objection is how they present themselves at the dinner table. Yeah, there's something to that. I made a video where PragerU recorded college students saying that climate change is real. We have 13 years left. The sections reveal that video recorded 5 years ago. Yeah. Like, my question to them, do we have to, we have record heat this summer? Yeah. Like, in the midst of all of this, right? World breaches key 1.5 Celsius warming mark for record number of days. Like, we know, right? Like, we know. That you guys are all here, like we're all here to just deal with this now, right? Like it's not ending, it's not stopping. We're all just like here to tell the truth to one another, to feel less crazy about what it is, and this has been a very revealing moment, right? This is a very revealing moment, right? Essence is the same. Ukraine Zelensky likens Hamas to Russia. Yes, in that they are both fighting for their people. Somebody earlier asked, "What do I think of Hamas?" Transylvanian, I completely understand, my man. Like, yeah, take a break from social media platforms for a while, too infuriating. Absolutely. No, absolutely, I understand. Look, man, without insult, ignorance is bliss. Like, I completely, there are people who I interact with on a fairly regular basis who their policy for politics is, I don't think about it. It's over there. I just live my life, and I got to tell you, they are very happy people. I think that if you can exist in that bandwidth, if you can just wake up and go through your day and not be confronted with any of that kind of stuff and exist like that, then it's kind of a blessing, frankly. There's something lovely, and they are lovely people. They're lovely people. Every time I interact with them, I feel like my life is better. That they uplift in many ways. I don't feel as though I feel as though doing this allows me to interact with those people in that bandwidth with more success, without sullying the experience by bringing this cloud of darkness into their sunshiny reality. Right? And I think that's true. I really do. Like that there just are people who are existing that way, and that they are kind of better off for it. The reason why I do this is because I have to. That it is an affliction more than anything. Like, it is. Like, there's just no two ways about it. Like, I can't not. And it's just who I am. It's built into my DNA. It's just built in. And if I don't do it, then I inflict it on the sunshine people, on random strangers. You ever see those people on the transit who are just sitting there kind of mumbling to themselves and talking to themselves and being like, oh, that's what I become if I don't do this kind of thing. Like, for real. That those people are people who don't have an outlet for this kind of thing. Like, I genuinely believe that. And why do I believe that? Because that's exactly who I would become. That I would just start talking to people on the streetcar and talking to people in other places about this stuff to try to find an outlet. Well, here's the outlet, and you guys tune in for it. And I'm so glad that you're here to listen to this stuff, because it's all wild. Yeah, it's wild. Killer writes, I live in Sweden. All our banks belong to Israel. Also, our newspapers and media is so crazy. Yeah, the whole thing's crazy, dude. It's all linked together. Like, the system of the system of global finance capital is all tied in. The military system is tied into Israel as well. Like, and they know that they need Israel to be there, right? If they want to be involved in the Middle East, and if they want to do their extravagance all throughout Africa, Russia, China, like, if they want to have influence in that part of the world, they need a big military base. Well, that's Israel, right? Israel is the big military base. And Joe Biden, of all people, said so openly. He said that if Israel didn't exist, we would need to create it. So they know how important Israel is to their military ambitions and to their finance ambitions and to the ambitions of capital. Like, they need Israel to be there, and that the Palestinians are just like just a byproduct of it, as far as they're concerned. Like, the Palestinians are just in their way more than anything, right? And the only reason they chose that territory, right? Two reasons they choose the territory. They have that convenient, like, oh, well, this is classic Israel, like, this is the homeland of Israel, and we've got this whole narrative of blah, blah, blah. But, like, strategically, if you just look at a map, right, like, as we do on the show every so often, if you just look at a map, it's perfect strategically, right? You get all your shit in here. You got Europe right here, right? You just bring it all in from the ocean, straight through here, boom, Israel. And then you're like right in the heart of the Middle East, right? And you're right in the middle of it. You have big influence over the Suez Canal. And the goal, of course, is, greater Israel. which the Greater Israel Project. There's a lot of different theories and a lot of different maps floating about. I might just have more success quickly. Yeah, but this is more or less the Greater Israel idea, right? We've even... This is the more or less the Greater Israel idea, that you take over parts of Saudi Arabia, sections of Iraq, Syria, right? And given the war that has happened in Syria, the war that's happened in Iraq, the influence that exists throughout Saudi Arabia, I think that this is all a pipe dream, of course. Right? The Saudis are not going to go along with this. You might be able to get Iraq involved, but like Lebanon, straight up, and like the Syrian situation has not gone the way the Americans want it to go to make this happen. And the Egyptians are certainly not going to just cede control of the Suez Canal, right? Greater Israel is a thing only extreme religious nuts even pretend to believe. I mean, Netanyahu showed a map of it. Netanyahu, Greater Israel map, UN. Netanyahu shows map of new Middle East without Palestine to UN Secretary General, to UN General Assembly, right? Like, this is the map that he showed. New Middle East. Like, this is sort of their idea of what this should look like as far as they're concerned. And of course, it doesn't involve Palestine at all, right? Yeah, Israel's in the blue, but the green is obviously like their allies and their strategic partners. And like, Saudi Arabia is steadily turning away from the West. So like, and you're right, this isn't exactly like a Greater Israel, but like, the idea is there. The theory is there. The concept is there. And I'm not saying that this is 100%, like this is what they're showing for real. Like this is actually what Netanyahu is showing for real. Panda Man, good to see you, my man, on Twitch. So we are living in this like absolute period of time where the death cult needs Israel. I closed it. They need Israel to be there. And they know they need Israel to be there because Israel is their port into the Middle East, right? They know they need it to be that way. They can't have it any other way. Like, because where else are they going to put this military base now, right? Like, if you put it down here, like let's say you do it in Kuwait, well, that means you got to go all the way around Africa or straight through this way, right? So you're re-gearing everything to go around this way, and you've already committed like 100 years of resources into Israel. Like, the commitment that has come now. And so you cannot have popular opinion turn against Israel. You can't have popular opinion turn against Israel. We have seen, America has seen what happens to military conflicts and its military adventurism overseas when popular opinion turns against it. It knows exactly what happens. Is that all it takes is a one-page document passed through Congress that says we no longer fund anything in regards to that country. Our aid towards, in this case, Vietnam is over. Is completely over. And then what happened? They all fucking left. It was over. Right? We had a display of that happen very, very recently. Very, very recently we had a display of that in Afghanistan. Where they just said, okay, it's over, and they just up and left. And what happened? The Taliban took over. Immediately. Like immediately. Like a week later, the Taliban took over. So what do you think would happen if a similar thing happened to Israel? What do you think would actually happen if America finally stood up and said, we can no longer support the state of Israel? We're not going to send any money. We're not going to send any finance. We're not going to send any military aid. We're not going to do anything for the state of Israel. What do you think would happen to Israel? Right? If I were to hazard a guess, I would say that Israel would last maybe a year before it was completely wiped out. And like, we would probably see a nuclear detonation of some kind. Like, Israel has nukes. Israel's a nuclear state. They made sure of it, right? They made sure of it. But I think that the hatred towards Israel is so great that the Muslims in that region would be like, okay, it's just another thing for us to look at, right? Yeah, Israel would fight like a rabid corner dog. Absolutely it would. Like, absolutely it would. Because they know. Like, they know what would happen. Like, you can't say that, like, they are in the heart of the Muslim world saying the shit that they say. And doing the shit that they're doing. Right? They're in the heart of the Muslim world. Like, they know exactly what would happen. They know exactly what would happen. Why would we stop support of Israel? Why now? I am just saying that if public opinion were to turn in that direction, right? And what would be a convincing argument to turn public opinion in that direction? Hey, we've been doing a genocide in Israel for decades now. Like, we've been funding this absolutely brutal apartheid state for decades. And people would finally go, oh yeah, that's right, we are. Like, we are doing that. And the information is becoming more obvious. It's more accessible. It's easier to find, right? Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom is very convincing, right? And all it would really take is for a political class or a political group to finally stand up and say, oh, wait, there's enough people out there who will vote for this. And so we'll say, yeah, we'll stop this. Right, the BDS movement exists, right? Which is blockade, divest, sanction in regards to Israel. Just stop supporting this apartheid state, and these kinds of movements do happen, and the death cult knows it. But it also knows that, like, Israel is completely tied into its interests in the Middle East. In Africa. Like, Israel is their strategic cornerstone. They bank on Israel being there. And if Israel wasn't there, they know that they would have to try to create one. Right? Like, it's their lily pad. It's how they get everything everywhere all of the time. Like, when they invaded Iraq, how do you think that went? Right? They went from Israel to Iraq. Like, when they're doing these bombing runs, when they're launching coups, like when they're doing stuff all throughout the Middle East and Africa, where do you think that all originates from? Right? And so it's super, super important that and the strategy used to be if you stood up and critiqued Israel at all, people just said, you're anti-Semitic. If you stood up and started talking about the Zionists at all, it was just, you're an anti-Semite. And that was the end of the conversation. Literally, anti-Semite, bigot, like, put that person on the defensive, right? Classic Trotskyism, just accuse them of racism, right? Put them on the defensive, make it so that they have to defend that position, which means that you're no longer talking about the Zionists that are obviously committing a genocide in Israel. And so, but that strategy no longer works. It doesn't work, right? Mainly because when the accusation comes down, people just go pfft and move on, and then just continue talking about the genocide because it's so childish, right? Like, of course we can talk about Israeli politics, specifically Zionist politics, right? Because Zionists are Nazis. It's a form of Nazism, and at this point, you've got to kind of be intentionally clueless to not put it together. Like, to not put it together. And what has been revealing about this moment, of course, is the people who are coming out in support of the genocide and the people who are coming out against the genocide, right? One of the big ones that I really wanted to show was Bernie Sanders, right? I absolutely condemn the horrifying attack on Israel by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. There is no justification for this violence. There is definitely justification for this violence, and innocent people on both sides will suffer. Both sides, right? Classic both sides rhetoric, right? Because the people who are being genocided are the same as the people who are committing the genocide, right? Pandaman says, I would say Nazism is an extremist label. My prime minister honored a Nazi in Parliament last month. So I think that it's time to get over it. That the country is falling into Nazism. It's very, very obvious to anyone who is actually paying attention and actually wants to be serious about these conversations. Zionism, and for clarity's sake, my position aligns with Albert Einstein's position. That Albert Einstein said that Zionism is a form of Nazism. So if you are saying that it is an extremist label, if you're saying it is extremism, then you're accusing someone like Albert Einstein of extremism. So at what point do you start calling someone accurately? At what point are you willing to say that it is accurate to say that what they are doing is a form of Nazism? Like would it need to be like ethnic cleansing? Check mark, done. Would it need to be a full-scale genocide? Check, done, right? What would it take for you? Like, why is it that you think it's extremists who call something accurately? Justin Trudeau doesn't represent Zionists. No, he just funds them. Of course he doesn't represent Zionists. He just gives them money and aid and support, right? And the support of the nation, right? This the literal military support and political support across the spectrum. So he doesn't represent Zionists, and no one says that he does, but he definitely funds them and aids them and gives them money and helps them with a genocide on behalf of my country. Absolutely, that's the case. Especially as he's honoring a Nazi in Parliament. It matters. You can criticize aspects of Zionism without labeling the most extreme aspects of it. Zionism is a form of Nazism, full stop, nothing else. That is essentially like saying you can critique aspects of Nazism without labeling the most extreme aspects of it. False. Full stop, no. Zionism is a form of Nazism, full stop. It is about racial purity. It is about separating races. It's about ethnic cleansing. That's the point of Zionism. That's the stated agenda, and that's what they're doing, and that's how they're carrying on. That you create a distinction between Zionists and Israelis and Jews. That Zionism is not Judaism. I don't say that Judaism is a form of Nazism, right? So that's the reason why I create a distinction. That I say that Zionism is a form of Nazism, Judaism is not. So if you want a distinction drawn, that's the distinction. Like there are plenty of liberal Israelis that, I'm sure of it. Yep, there are plenty of liberal Israelis who are not Zionists, right? That there is being an Israelite, there is being a Jew, and there is being a Zionist. And if you are going to call yourself a Zionist, then that is a form of Nazism. Full stop. Like full stop. And I mean, for goodness sakes, the liberals are revealing themselves to basically be fascists at this point, right? They really are. They're essentially standing up and just saying, like, let's commit a genocide against these people, which is what they're doing, right? Israel-Hamas war updates, Gaza under total blockade, refugee camp hit. This was on the 9th, so yesterday. Netanyahu vows to use enormous force in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to change the Middle East in the country's war with Hamas. What Hamas will experience will be difficult and terrible. We are going to change the Middle East, the 73-year-old leader told officials from southern Israel. This is only the beginning. We are all with you, and we will defeat them with force, enormous force. Palestinian groups in Lebanon are eager to fight. Hamas's operation happened at an opportune moment. Like, my favorite theory about what's going on is that the attack itself was actually a false flag event in order to justify the permanent cleansing of this, right? So the liberal side of the coin, and of course, moving on to the revealing aspect of all of this. So the NDP revealed themselves to be completely pro-genocide, right? They're in the pocket of capital, 100%. CBC doubles down on not referring to Hamas as terrorists. So the positive spin on that, coming out of True North, which is pro-genocide, of course, is that CBC is trying to remain neutral. They're not calling Hamas terrorists. So they are not explicitly pro-genocide, which I have to say is a success for my country. Get a little sliver of light, a little shining light, right? Really shows you why the Nazis, i.e. the Conservatives and the Liberal Alliance, want to destroy the CBC, right? The reason why they want to defund the CBC is because they need to get rid of any organization that's not willing to go along with the capitalist plan. And the capitalist plan is obviously to continue the genocide of the Palestinians and to entrench the military base in the Middle East. The National Post, unsurprisingly, revealing itself to be completely pro-genocide. And not surprisingly, The Sun reveals itself to be completely pro-genocide. That the pro-genocider crowd are just ruthlessly bloodthirsty. Like lunatic level. Like, this is Nazism what we are watching. Full stop. Like, there is no reason to call it anything else. And if somebody were to stand up and say, oh, you can't just call everything you think is bad Nazism, there does come a point where you're saying, okay, but when do you? Like, do you actually need to see a swastika and the salute and have them saying Heil Hitler? Like, is that literally what you need to see before you're willing to actually call it for what it is? Because this is Nazism. Like, there's just no two ways about it. That we are watching our society cheerlead a genocide, saying, rah, rah, kill millions of people, hooray. Like, that's what we're up to. That's right. So, Svali Floria says, every war starts with a false flag. Not every war, but, like, we should be skeptical. Like, we should be skeptical. There's reason to be skeptical. But I mean, the truth is that, like, I just, like, to me, it doesn't matter. False flag event or not, it doesn't matter. It's literally like, if it's a false flag event, it's just the genociders wanting to kick off the genocide. And if it's the people of Palestine defending themselves against a genocide, then that's what did it. That the result is still the same. And, like, I think that the people of Palestine are justified in fighting back. Right? The critique against them is that they're fighting back, right? And so, to answer this question, finally, what do I think of Hamas? Because Hamas gets a lot of criticism, right? My position is that Hamas absolutely has the right to defend itself against a genocidal apartheid state and an empire that's trying to destroy its people. And that's where my opinion ends. That how they want to rule and how the Palestinian people are going to be ruled is their business and is amongst them. We have literally no right to judge them at all. Like, straight up, we have no position. We have no leg to stand on. We've got nothing to say to them that has any value whatsoever. We've literally stolen their land and committed a genocide against them. And if they decide that what they want is like a theocracy that is hereditary, if they want a hereditary theocracy and that's the way that they want to be ruled, and that's the way they are ruled, okay. What's convinced us that what we're doing is so good? Like, what's got us so convinced that this is the thing to do? Right? What's got us so convinced that we are absolutely the coolest people ever who should absolutely be paid attention to and we're God's gift? Right? Is it the fact that we're so powerful that we're destroying ourselves? Like, is that what it is? that boy howdy, it's so awesome that we are we are ripping ozone holes bigger than North America opening above Antarctica. Isn't that awesome? Isn't this awesome? How we're literally destroying ourselves for nothing? Cool. Like, so at the end of the day, like, whatever Hamas and whatever organization that gets Palestine organized, right, whatever they end up doing, should there be survivors of this, right, is their business, and we literally do not have the right to critique them. Full stop. Like, and have they done brutal things? Yeah, I'm sure. Like, absolutely, I'm sure. Right? Like, I'm sure that when the First Nations people were fighting against the colonizers, they did brutal things too. I'm absolutely sure of it. The question is, who is the aggressor? Who is the colonizer? Who is the one that's kicking in the door? Right? Like, at this point, it's kind of like trying to tell me, like, oh, the rebels, they got into those X-Wings and they blew up the Death Star. Despicable. Think of how many stormtroopers were on that Death Star. Millions of people were on that Death Star. Millions of people were on that Death Star when they blew up the Death Star. And the evil, like, shut up. Like, shut up. What are you talking about? It's a fucking Death Star. They blew up a Death Star, and they should have blown up the Death Star, and everybody should agree that they blew up the Death Star. And when they did blow up the Death Star, everybody in the audience went, yay! They blew up the Death Star. And if somebody were to stand up in the middle of the audience and be like, that's a heinous destruction of lives, people would have been like, fuck, boo. And they would have thrown popcorn at that guy. Right? Somebody on Twitch, Multi-Frame Media, what are we talking about tonight? Bro, what do you think we're talking about tonight? What do you think we're talking about tonight? We're talking about Palestine. Palestine fighting back against Israel. The Zionists who are Nazis. Nazi Zionists. Well, to be fair to the Zionists, right? They are not Nazis, but their belief system is Nazism, right? Like, they call themselves Zionists, but it's Nazism. Pretty plainly, pretty straightforwardly. And my favorite are the people who are just absolutely playing dumb about it, which includes, again, to reiterate, not just the leader of my country, but the leader of the opposition, as well as the NDP. So all three of the major political parties federally are pro-genocide, right? This crap, also known as nothing new from the propaganda machine. All right, which side of it? Because there's a legitimate attack going on in Israel right now. It's actually quite serious. Like, Netanyahu has outright said that he is going to, what's the quote? What Hamas will experience will be difficult and terrible. We're going to change the Middle East. I think change the Middle East is an interesting phrase to use, right? There's 2.5 million people who live in the Gaza Strip, right? So is he going to just carpet bomb it finally and just ethnically cleanse the people of Gaza? Just like completely eliminate it? Just make it so that little tiny strip that exists where people are permitted to live, just get rid of that? Is that the plan? Just make it like carve that out, goodbye? Seems like that might be the plan. Panda Man doing Nazi apologism, so goodbye. No Nazi apologism in my chat. Goodbye. Zionists are Nazis. If you try to convince us otherwise, that is Nazi apologism. You will be banned. What is happening in Israel is a form of Nazism. Straightforward, very easy to see. You have to be intentionally dumb to think otherwise. Right, you really got to be sitting there being like, well, we're okay sometimes, Shut up. No, you're not. Like, no, you're not. You're genocidal maniacs, right? Didn't Saudi make a statement about Israel? I'm sure. I don't have every statement in front of me, right? I don't have every statement in front of me. Like, Noam Chomsky actually nailed this. I don't think this is him responding to this particular event, but like, you take my water, burn my olive trees, destroy my house, take my job, steal my land, imprison my father, kill my mother, bombard my country, starve us all, humiliate us all, but I am to blame. I shot a rocket back. Right? Understanding completely, the criticism is, how dare they fight back? Like, how dare they fight back? Right? Like, it's wild living in this country that is revealing itself to be essentially pro-genocide. Right? It's wild living in this pro-genocidal country that actually is standing up in front of the entire world, saying, like, foaming at the mouth, calling for the genocide of a people. While then trying to convince other people that they actually care about things like the Uyghurs, right? People like the Uyghurs, right? That they actually care about the Ukrainians even. Like, it's wild to see this happen. Like, what are you guys talking about? There are lots of civilians that were born decades after the original settlers. It's like saying that all colonizers from Canada needs to leave Canada so the average... My man, I just banned somebody off Twitch for Nazi apologencia. It is not like that. This is an ongoing, active genocide that they are actively dropping bombs on people actively today. You can go to Israel like Abby Martin did and talk to people in the streets of Israel, and they are calling for the genocide of the Israelis. This is not, well, my grandfather did a thing. Oh, my grandfather did a thing. This is an active, real-time event that is happening right now. You can watch Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom. You can watch this shit, and you can watch it happen in real time. To pretend like essentially right now you're trying to convince me that there is such a thing as an innocent Nazi. Like, that during the Nazi regime, when Hitler was literally in the middle of the war effort, Nazi flags everywhere, the Hitler salute being done constantly, that there was such a thing as an innocent Nazi. Like, get the fuck out of here with that. Like, get the fuck right out of here with that. That's garbage. Like, that's garbage talk. It's a garbage way to think. It's a garbage thing to have in your brain at all. We are supporting an obvious, overt, directly in front of your face, very clear to see, you've got to be intentionally obtuse to miss it, genocide that is 100% happening. You can literally see it happening on Google Earth. Like, we've sent in documentarians, we've got footage, we've got aerial footage, we've got historical documentation. We literally have all of the evidence you could possibly want to see of this ongoing genocide that is definitely happening, and people are trying to convince me that there's such a thing as an innocent Zionist. There's no such thing as an innocent fucking Zionist. They're all in on this. This is what they are doing. It's very clear that this is what they are fucking doing. And this is what they want to do. This is how they are acting. This is what they are supporting. And the concept that there is an innocent Nazi in the middle of this, right? Let's make a big fucking movie about this. Let's cast Charlie Chaplin in the innocent Nazi, and Charlie Chaplin will just go around being like a dopey innocent Nazi, right? Just going along with it. Fuck. Cuckery is buckery. What are my thoughts on this Palestinian shit, bro? This is what we're talking about tonight, man. Stick around. You're gonna hear all about it. This is multi-frame media. Isn't it so ironic how their world script, aka the Bible, talks about all this crap? It's all planned. That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, there is a plan. Like, I don't know that it's like in the Bible, but like there is a plan. Are you going to be pissed if we give them all our tax money? Yeah, we do give them our tax money. Like, we give money to Israel constantly. The money we give to Israel is literally in the military budget. Like, it's not a special thing. Like, it's not like we sit there at, like with Ukraine, right? Like, it's not with Ukraine where we need to be like, oh, let's send them $2 billion. Let's send them $6 billion. And we got to do like a special fund, right? It's actually in the military budget. There's a line in every single military bill that passes that is aid for Israel, right? It's in the American military budget. It's in the Canadian military budget. It's not a special thing. It's built in. So we've been funding this the entire time, right? Like our hands are covered in blood on this, like covered in blood. And the reason why the most powerful people and the most connected people are need to condemn this at the highest possible levels because they know they're drenched in blood over it, right? Here's one of my favorites. One of my absolute favorites. A Wikipedia article, Canada Park. Canada Park is an Israeli national park stretching over 7,000 dunams, 7 kilometers, and extending from no man's land into the West Bank. The park is located north of Highway 1, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and is situated near the Ayalon Valley between the Latrun Interchange and Shahar Haga. The park is full with natural attractions including man-made forests, Mediterranean woodlands, home to many local flowers, the remains of ancient orchids. The park also has a number of historical interests, including a Hasmonean Jewish fort, burial caves, and ritual baths of the Second Temple period, and the Bar Korba Revolt, a Crusader fort, a Roman bathhouse that was turned into a Macam, the remnants of 3 former Palestinian Arab towns, and various military memorials. There are also recreation areas, springs, and panoramic several hilltop views. Just so that we don't glaze over it, right? Just so we don't glaze over it, right? In the park has a number of historical interests. Think Crusader fort, right? A Jewish fort, burial caves, right? The remnants of 3 former Palestinian Arab towns. So within this park called Canada Park, and we'll get into why it's called Canada Park, literally they're just like, here's the genocide. If you look to your left, you'll see the Palestinian Arab towns where the Jews rounded up the Palestinians and forced them off their land so that you could come through the park and see it. Canada Park is considered a popular tourist destination for Israelis, drawing some 3,000 visitors annually. I'm an innocent Nazi. What, these Palestinian towns that are here, does that have anything to do with the Palestinians that are in the open-air prison in Gaza? Oh, well, I'm just an innocent Zionist. Features. Canada Park covers an area of 7,000 dunams. It's filled with wooded areas, walking trails, and water features, and archaeological areas. Trees in the park include olive, carob, pomegranate, pine, and almond. The area is also home to a range of wildlife, from lizards to turtles, to gray ravens and blue jays. Historical ruins on the grounds of the park include a Roman bathhouse, a Hasmonean Jewish cemetery, and a Crusader fortress. 2 Second Temple Pyramid mikvehs, a type of Jewish ritual bath, were also discovered there. At the foot of one of the hills that overlooks the city of Modin is a large reservoir built by the Jewish National Fund for irrigating local fields. In the middle of the park is a forest planted to commemorate over 300 American and Canadian Jews who died in Israel's wars or were victims of terror. An annual memorial ceremony is organized by the Association of Americans and Canadians in Israel. In 2011, the ceremony was attended by the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Daniel Shapiro. Mr. Shapiro, if you take a look to the left, you'll see the remnants of 3 Palestinian towns completely cleared out by the Israelis in the last couple of decades. Those people were relocated into the open-air prison of Gaza. What a great tourist destination for us to send our ambassador to Israel during a ceremony where they honored the people who died cleansing the land of Palestinians so that we could have this park. After capturing the area in 1967 during the Six-Day War, Israel took over the Palestinian villages in the area, which were then razed on the orders of, this is the establishment. Let's begin from the top, right? After capturing the area in 1967, so literally the Beatles are on tour, right? So you say you want a revolution, baby, yeah, you want to hold your hand. Over 6 days. Israel took over the Palestinian villages in the area, which were then razed on the order of the Israeli general Yitzhak Rabin, innocent Zionists, with 7,000 to 10,000 inhabitants expelled. Just straight up, like the population of my hometown, just ripped out, sent into this fucking open-air concentration camp. 1,464 homes demolished. Imwas, Yalo, and Bwat Nuba were demolished as part of strategic plans to widen the Jerusalem corridor. Deirin Yaub, also on the grounds of the park, has been partially destroyed during the fighting in 1948 and never rebuilt. The inhabitants were offered compensation, probably the way that like the people of East Palestine, right, in the United States were offered compensation. Here's a voucher to a McDonald's. Good luck with your poisoned land, but not allowed to return. The lands of the 3 villages were confiscated and declared a closed area, and not only declared public land to be developed for a recreational park 2 years later in 1969. Isn't that nice? Right? They just cleansed the land of Palestinians and then were like, we're going to turn this into a golf course. The settlement of Mevon Horon was built on the lands of Bayat Nuba in 1970. Signage in the park indicates that it falls under the Department of Archaeology. Civil administration of Judea and Samaria being the Israeli terms for the West Bank. Canadian funding. In 1972, Bernard Bloomfield of Montreal, then president of JNF Canada, spearheaded a campaign among the Canadian Jewish community to raise $15 million, $80 million in terms of value in 2010. So that's like $1 trillion today. It's a lot of money. For the park's establishment. The road leading to the park is named for John Diefenbaker, the former Canadian Prime Minister, who opened it in 1975. The project was completed in 1984. So former Prime Minister John Diefenbaker went, Mr. Diefenbaker, if you take a look on your left, you'll see 3 cleared out villages where the Palestinians used to live. Literally 8 years ago, while the Beatles were on tour. We just cleared them right out and sent them to a concentration camp. Don't worry, though. We gave them a voucher for Chuck E. Cheese. The project was completed in 1984. The residents' request to return. In 1976, Palestinian residents of Imwas, Yalo, and Bayat Nuba wrote to the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin asking for what they described as their legitimate humanitarian right to return to the villages from which we were driven and expelled in order to rebuild their houses without requesting compensation from Israel. How generous of them. They did not receive a reply. In 2007, the Israeli NGO Zotrot wrote to Israel's Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, on behalf of the residents to ask why they could not return to their homes. In 2008, the minister's office informed them that the return of the village inhabitants was not allowed for security considerations. In 2013, the Palestinian National Authority's Negotiation Affairs Department launched a campaign to have the 50-kilometer contiguous to the Green Line restored to it as a vital and integral part of the state of Palestine as defined by the 1967 border. Criticism. According to former Israeli parliamentarian and political left activist Uri Averny, the creation of the park was tantamount to complicity and ethnic cleansing, and Canadian involvement in its creation a cover to a war crime. According to Meron Ben-Venetsty, the function of such reforestation projects, like that at Canada Park, was to confiscate Arab land in the Palestinian territories of Israel occupied after 1967. The JNF's reforestation program privileges pine over indigenous species, and according to Ilan Pop, the choice of planting a forest based on fast-growing species was dictated by considerations of rapidly hindering a return of refugees to their land, while, as evergreens, quickly concealing the demolished villages' sites with their year-round leafage. Mr. Diefenbaker, if you look to your left, you'll see the beautiful evergreen pines covering the remnants of the Palestinian villages where we cleared out people as the Beatles were on tour. Like this shit's fucked up, right? Like this shit's fucked up. This is just the really, like, this is why you're alive, right? Is to really revel in the, like, absolute, total fucked upness of how wild it is that we, like, as Canadians and as Americans, have just straight up been like, yeah, just do a genocide there. Just, like, straight up commit a genocide against the Palestinian people. We'll sign a document. We'll put a park there, right? No trouble, no muss, no fuss, right? Nothing like that.
Did you guys hear about the Uyghurs in China? Did you guys hear the Chinese Uyghurs? They're rounding up the Muslims and doing a genocide against the Muslims in China. This is a serious thing that we should be very serious about because we have the moral high ground. We've got the ability to say that that's a genocide and be taken seriously. Yeah. You should definitely pay attention to us because we're very serious people. We're not definitely engaged in a massive genocide that's 100% a genocide. You know, it's that sense. I think the thing that kills me the most, or certainly the thing that's striking me at this exact moment, is how the pro-genocidal crowd expects us to, like, love them for it. You know? There's like that sense. There's like that smacking, like, how audacious of you. They have that kind of idea around them of like, you're a horrible person for being against a genocide. Like you're an evil shitbag. You're the one, the 100 people that the Ghazians killed. That's the true abomination right there. How dare they fight back? You should love your genocidal rulers. Yeah. There's been a dozen Gandhis in Palestine, and for that matter, in Donbass and Odessa. Yeah, guess what happens? Hard to know. Real question mark looming over that one, right? Real question mark looming over that one. Like, and what kills me is that this one's real obvious. Like, this one's real obvious, you know? I do have to appreciate, right? And I think it is worth stating. I can picture this, like, 80-year-old boomer, right? There's, like, an 80-year-old boomer type that's out there who has only really ever watched, like, legacy news media, right? Whose information flow has been intentionally gatekept, that they don't know anything because they have been intentionally corralled that way. And oh my God, is that it? Is it just the worship of daddy? Is that all it is? The worship of the pen? The worship of the cage? Like the worship of Big Brother? Because that is kind of what it's like, isn't it? When you're talking to these people. That yes, they're intentionally stupid. And there is that kind of sneering sort of contempt that has that kind of my dad could beat up your dad sort of quality. And that sense of dismissiveness that can only be really described as like paternalistic. There's a protection of like, there's a protection of the system of capital that has that familial sort of quality that you become willfully dumb and willfully obtuse because the stakes are so high for you. It's like a generational support. You're defending your father, right? It's like how Jordan Peterson followers defend him. That when you go after Jordan Peterson, you get the dumbest possible responses because they're defending their surrogate father, basically. That their own dad wasn't there for them, and so they've replaced Jordan Peterson with that father figure in their life. And so if you critique him, then you're critiquing daddy. Yeah, is it straight up the patriarchy? Is it straight up? Has it always been the patriarchy? The worship of the patriarchy? Is it, are we there? Did we do it? Did we get all the way there? Was it literally, has there been a feminist listening in 50 years from now? 50 years from now. No, let's be funnier. 500 years into the future. The only thing that's going to survive from this time period are these recordings that somehow, through a confluence of just absolute stupidity and ridiculousness, all of these recordings are going to end up on one disk drive at like the YouTube headquarters or whatever, and they're gonna there'll be some conflagration, some fire or something, and this disk drive will be the one that survives, and they'll like dust it off and they'll plug it in and it'll be like, well, this is what we got. We don't got much from that time period. You know, there was the great conflagration of 2100 or whatever. And like, there's like all of the craziness that went on. And there's some historian, they're going to plug in and they're going to be listening to it. And there's going to be some woman. There's going to be some woman sitting on the other end of this, sitting there going, no, yes, worship of money. Yeah, worship of the self. Absolutely. The worship of, it's the patriarchy, you dumb fucking monkey. Say it. Just one time even. Even if you said it as a joke, just say it. I think it is. Oh my God, I think it actually is. Dude, that one's been staring me in the face for a long time. Holy cow. Because it is that. It is this intentional, willful stupidity. This intentional refusing to acknowledge reality, refusing to acknowledge facts, refusing to acknowledge the reality of the situation, this puffed up chest defense of that really comes from that kind of mindset of my dad can beat up your dad, and that we might not always agree, but we're sure as shooting gonna fight together, you know? Regardless of how ridiculous things are and how stupid it is, right? That, like, you know, he might not always be right, but he's my dad. And I'm going to go in there and fight that fight with him because he's my blood, and blood supports blood, and all of that kind of shit. And it doesn't matter how stupid it gets, and it doesn't matter how silly it gets, and it doesn't matter how ridiculous it gets, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how fraudulent and phony and absurd. Because it's my dad, and I gotta back my dad. And it's just straight up. It's just straight up like that. Just like this worship of the patriarchy. That daddy is saying that this is right, and so it is. And then when it's your turn to be daddy, when it's your turn to be the dad, right, you're going to carry on the legacy of your dad. And you're not going to want to besmirch the name of your father, right? You're going to do what you can to protect your father's legacy and carry out his vision. And to do so, you've got to be intentionally stupid. To do so, you have to be intentionally stupid. You know what's annoying about this one, Grinning? You know what is annoying about this one? Is now that I've said it out loud, it seems extremely obvious. And like, obvious to a level of like kind of concerning. You know what I mean? Like concerning for me, like my own personal self-reflection. Like I feel like I should have had this one earlier. You know what I mean? Like my best friend is a lesbian. Like my boss is a trans woman. Like I feel like I definitely should have gotten this earlier. I think I just got hung up on the stupidity. I think I got hung up on the lower level of it. You know what I mean? I got hung up on the behavioral pattern and not the structure. I think that that's fair. That it's just I got hung up on that. And I wasn't getting the perspective I needed. And now that I've said it out loud, I can feel my brain just like putting pieces together and just being like, yeah, it's the page. It's always been the fucking page. John, you watched the Barbie movie. You should have seen it. This the Barbie movie was right all along. I'm going to have to do like some more research and really sharpen that edge. Because I feel like the other edges are well sharpened. I feel like the money point and the self point. But the patriarchy is like Carol Gillian, Jane Goodall, Jane Jacobs, Lynn Margulis, Ursula Franklin. Oh, man. Good. I love it. I know exactly who to talk to about this. If you want to expand your knowledge beyond listening to libs like Majority Report, listen to Breakthrough News. We had a new commenter in here, actually. Angus McTavish. That is a strong and powerful name. Angus McTavish of the McTavishes. I love it. Resist. Don't buy into the fascist Canadian system. It's just so obvious. Yeah, dude, this really makes it obvious, doesn't it? Doesn't it just make it as clear as day? This situation right now. And the fact that it's happening like on the tailcoats. I literally, tomorrow I'm going to go get my beard trimmed.
I'm getting it trimmed. Little less Hagrid, little more Dumbledore. That's what I'm going to do. I am going to smooth this thing out, and then I was going to do a video about the Nazi thing, the Nazi Parliament thing again, to just like really drive this in that there's a 0% chance that they did not know this. Like, what are we dumb? And then this shit happened. So like right on the tailcoats of Justin Trudeau standing up and being like, yes, a Nazi in Parliament is such a good, yes, he's a Canadian war hero having fought against Canadians in World War II. What a war hero. Yes. Chrystia Freeland being like, yeah, war hero, the Nazi. Yeah. My favorite part of the whole thing is Rhoda being like, today we have a Canadian war hero and a Ukrainian who fought in World War II against the Russians. That moment, my absolute favorite moment, where he just pauses and he has the eyebrow raise. It's like, he reads, against the Russians. And you can see it. It's all over his face. He's like, this guy's a Nazi. He immediately knows. It's so obvious to me that Rhoda was handed this piece of paper. He had never met this guy in his life, right? That it turned out that the guy was from the same district. So what? There's 100,000 people in that district. He never met this guy once in his life. Rhoda was handed the document. He read it. He read that line and went, oh, shit nozzle. This guy's a Nazi. And it was just like, just roll with it, Rhoda. And finished it up. Everybody stood up and went, yeah, a fucking literal Nazi. Yeah. And if it hadn't been for the fact that a bunch of Jewish organizations started to be like, that guy's a Nazi, hey, whoa, and then it fucking blew up from there. It became an international scandal, made international headlines. Everybody just being like, what are you doing? And the Canadian media's response was, oh, what a dunderdoodle. Oh, that Rhoda guy, he just made a doopsie-doo. As if that's a serious defense that should be taken seriously, right? Sorry to interrupt. You need to apply for channel monetization. You have over 30 followers on Twitch. Is that all it takes on Twitch? I started streaming like 2 weeks ago on Twitch, dude. Like 30 followers and you can monetize on Twitch? You know how many you need on YouTube? 1,000. So I just assumed it was like some big fucking number. I wasn't even going to look until like 200. So I'm going to look into that. Thank you, Hiltosis. I appreciate that. And I got to ask, Hiltosis, is your name connected at all to StarCraft player Artosis? If not, thank you for the tip, my man. I'm going to look into that. I think Rhoda knew about that hunk of guy well before he was coming. Look, I think they all knew. Okay, like outside of the whole like the grift, or not the grift, the bit that I was just doing. There's no way Chrystia Freeland didn't know. There's no way Justin Trudeau did not know. There's no way Rhoda. Like the only narrative that makes sense to me that Rhoda didn't know is that he just like was handed a piece of paper and he read it, because that's what happens. I'm so sorry, guys. I gotta pee again. I'm working out more, so I'm drinking way more water. I'll be right back. Ridiculous. I'm so sorry, guys. Like, look, here's a conversation
Here is the conversation that 100% most definitely, absolutely happened. Right? Oh, Halitosis is grinning, guys. You're double fisting it. I value that, man. You're sitting there being like, from both sides of the thing. Amazing. Thank you, bud. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Here is a conversation that 100% happened. And if you think that this conversation did not happen, it is because you are dumb. Right? Hey, hello. I am Anthony Rhoda. I would like to invite a Ukrainian war hero in order to be honored in front of the Canadian Parliament in front of Zelensky during a highly critical diplomatic meeting. Oh, a Ukrainian war hero. What conflict did he fight in? World War II against the Russians. He's a Nazi. And scene. There is absolutely no chance, 0% chance that a conversation like that did not happen. Like, hello, I would like to invite someone to be honored in front of Parliament so that I can read a piece of paper and have every parliamentarian in Canada stand up in front of the president of a foreign power that we are currently aiding in a war, to have everyone applaud in front of him. Why? Why is he important at all? Who cares about this guy? Why are we wasting Zelensky's time, the parliamentarians' time, the prime minister's time, Miss Freeland's time? Why should anyone care about this at all? Oh, it's because he's a Canadian, he's a war hero that fought on the side of the Ukrainians against the Russians in World War II. Oh, he's a fucking Nazi. Like, there's a 0% chance that this conversation did not happen. Like, if you are trying to convince me that that conversation did not happen, then you are trying to convince me that that meeting had less vetting than your cousin's wedding social. You're genuinely trying to convince me that, like, yeah, what I want to do, Shirley, is I want to invite someone to your wedding to give a toast in front of everybody and have everybody clap for that person who's going to give a toast. Do you think Shirley or the wedding planner or anybody is going to ask, oh, who is this person? And if you responded, oh, it's Shirley's ex who she has a police thing. What's that called? I love it. I'm hitting this punchline. I'm nailing this punchline. She's got a restraining order against, right? If you said it's her ex-boyfriend who she's got a restraining order against, people would go, no. Right? And if they let him in, and Shirley would be mad. And she would go, you know he has a restraining order. And if you turned around and went, what? That's your ex-boyfriend who had a restraining order? What? Then Shirley has every single right to just bop you one. To just like bop you right in the face. Just like boop. And Shirley would be like, boop. And you'd be like, oh. And if you were like, whoa, aggression. Like, eat it. Generation Y Me, thank you for the donation, my man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Writing, congratulations on your monetization, buddy. I did not realize that it was so easy on Twitch. Who knew that Twitch was so easy? I should just abandon you. Follow the money. Time to Zuckerberg these guys. No. That's rude. That's rude. On the big question, Carol Gillian is the key. Feminist moral reasoning psychologist. Worked closely with Larry Kohlberg. Amazing insights into what we think morality is. Interesting. Yet Trudeau was so red-faced that he had to go home and put on blackface. Leon says, my theory, Chrystia Freeland used Hunka as a canary to test the waters for her run at prime minister. I think that Freeland is going to join NATO. That's where I think Freeland lands. That the Liberals know that their time is up. I would be surprised if Freeland even ran, because I think the Liberals know that their time is over, that the polls are showing a real strong decline. They're not doing anything in order to try to regain voters. They're not really fighting back, right? Sorry, man. It's just so amusing to me at this point when somebody comes in. We got no to bud. Commieism, no good, very bad. Good point, bud. We definitely take that seriously here at the Canadian Commie. Thanks for your contribution. We politely disagree. Mainly, just so you know, mainly because communism has worked every single time it's been tried. But have a nice day, my man. Thanks for your contribution. I think she was trying to decide between Prime Minister and Neda, and Hunka was the deciding factor. That, like, are the Canadian people going to be cool with my Nazi history? That my family were in bed with Nazis, and, like, are we suddenly cool with Nazis? Is that cool? Has enough time passed? Was this just like a time thing? was it like one of these things where, like, eventually people will be like, like if I found out that, like, let's say Joe Biden, somebody came out and was like, Joe Biden's ancestor was Genghis Khan, I'd be like, okay, like, what are you gonna do? Like, there's no possible way he could control that. And even if Joe Biden was like, Genghis Khan, baller, I wouldn't be like, boo to you, Joe Biden, for saying baller to the fact that Genghis Khan was your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. You should condemn this connection, It's just like so much. Imagine trolling out a 98-year-old just for your social experiment and exposing him to his last days to extradition to Poland. Yeah, that's hilarious. Is that actually happening? Is he actually being extradited to Poland? Like is he literally packing up his bags and moving to Poland? Is that happening? I hope so. Fuck that guy. But EU and UK both rejected Freeland as head of NATO. They're not insane. It was only Washington that wanted Freeland to run NATO. Oh, I didn't realize it was that position. Like, for chief secretary, that's a bit much. I was sort of expecting, like, a junior position. Yeah, at 98 years old is the perfect age to fucking try and jail a fucking Nazi. You know what age is the perfect age to try and jail a Nazi? Any age. Literally any age. Pick an age, that's the perfect year. Done. Not that I feel guilty for Hunka, but I'm sure she should feel bad for him. Like, I don't think that... I wish somebody would really ask her a bunch of questions about Nazism. I just wish somebody would be like, so, Miss Freeland, your grandfather was a Nazi collaborator, right? And just start the conversation right there. And then have, like, a very lengthy and interesting conversation with her about her grandfather and what she thinks about her grandfather and how she feels about her grandfather. And, like, we know that she's, like, she loves her grandfather. Like, we know. She's said outright that I really support the actions of my grandfather. I'm proud of the work my grandfather did with the Nazis under Goebbels. Like, she would feel bad for him at least, but maybe she's just that immorally psychotic. You know what? It's interesting because I think family messes everything up. This kind of stuff messes everything up. That, like, human beings can keep two thoughts in their head that contradict one another, that they can. And I bet you she is like that. I bet that she is like, I've got these ties to this Nazi thing and I know Nazism is bad. But, like, I didn't have control of that, but I love my father. And so it's like this complex cesspool, right? And it's these two things just coming to, like, to a head. And she wants the power, but at the same time she wants to honor her grandfather. It's something that would make like a really interesting character study. I actually think that that's true. If somebody made a really interesting character study movie about Chrystia Freeland and like really told a story that wasn't trying to outright overtly condemn her, but just trying to show that, look, this is a woman who is tied in with some Nazis. Like, she is tied in with Nazis. She also wants power. She's obviously tied up in this power game and is trying to maneuver it. I think it would be fascinating. I think it really would if it was done with delicacy. If it wasn't done to just be like, Chrystia Freeland's a Nazi, throw eggs at her, right? Which that also would be a great movie, right? Just Chrystia Freeland comes out, Nazi flag comes down, boo! Film over. I'd watch it. Forget her grandpa. She tried to scribble names into the terrorist list. Russiagate, the trucker convoy, bankrupt everyone who donated to the convoy. Yeah, stand with the swastika. The Christian Freeland story. Yeah, dude, I gotta tell you, this whole situation with the standing up and honoring a Nazi in Parliament has me like, I was sort of on the fence about the convoy. Not on the fence about the convoy. Like, I was somewhat sympathetic simply because of the connection. Like, I believe in protest, and I think that Canadian citizens have the right to protest. That's it. That if you get together as a group and you go protest, that is your right, and I don't care what it is you're standing for. That you have the right to protest, and that is sacred. That is sacred in Canada. So it doesn't matter that I disagree with their position. It doesn't matter that I disagree with their principles. It doesn't matter that I disagree with their tactics. None of that matters. They had the right to protest. And the Trudeau government stood up and took that away from them by evoking an Emergency War Measures Act. And so I've always been sympathetic to them. But now that they have stood up and they have honored a Nazi in Parliament, I hope the fucking convoy shows up with 1,000 fucking trucks. And I hope they sit on that front lawn and honk those horns for a fucking 1,000 years. Fuck Trudeau. Fuck Trudeau. That fucking Nazi. Like, holy shit. Like, holy shit. Like, holy shit. The convoy, yeah, I think that's true across the board, CH. Like, the convoy was stupid. They had idiot leaders, right? There's no right to quote the honk and pollute period gray area, right? It is a gray area. There's no right to honk and pollute, right? The reason why I'm pretty soft on this kind of language is that very similar things were said about Occupy. Very similar things. They don't have the right to hit those drums. They're so smelly. They don't have the right to be smelly like that. Like, I get very, very, like, I back off pretty fast when people start saying that kind of stuff. Because to me, that's just one step down from we should evoke the War Measures Act and get rid of these guys, right? They had the right to protest. And the convoy, you can disagree with their position on the mandate. You can stand there and scream at me as long as you want that vaccines work until you're blue in the face. Vaccines work. Vaccines work. We should have mandated those. Absolutely. Vaccines work, right? They still have the right to protest. Fuck you. Too bad. Tough shit. Tough shit. That's how this whole thing works, is that people have the right to protest. And what's despicable to me about the Trudeau administration is that they never once went and spoke to those guys. That the entire purpose of launching a protest is to be heard and to get your grievances addressed. And a proper governor and a proper prime minister and a proper premier would have gone down there and been like, what are these grievances? How do we actually resolve this as swiftly as possible? The fact that the truckers were even there, to me, is a failure of governance, right? Is an absolute failure of governance. And the idea that Trudeau called them Nazis while then standing up in Parliament and being like, yeah, hunka, I love Nazis. Get the fuck right out of here with that shit. He's obviously a fraud, right? A coward to the highest possible degree, right? Evoking a War Measures Act to deal with people. Like, you know what they could have done? Like, you know what they could have done? Like, straight up, what they could have done is they could have just said, oh, there's like 1,000 people involved in this. There's like 1,000 truckers, right? We're just gonna we'll just do an exception for these guys. Who gives a fuck? Like, you're telling me that these guys are actually a serious and legitimate vector? Like a guy that basically just lives in a truck, talks to nobody, interacts with nobody, right? Goes across Canada, basically stopping at gas stations, maybe at a diner ever so often, right? And these guys are a major vector point. Really? Like, you're going to dig your heels in and you're going to stand up and be a tough boy for like what? Like, what are you actually getting out of this? Like, what did they actually get out of it? It looks like they got a bunch of headaches. They made themselves look like total assholes. They lost millions of dollars of revenue because the trucker convoy ended up blockading a bridge, right? So they lost millions of dollars. They did one of the furthest right actions that has happened in my lifetime in Canada, which is the evocation of the War Measures Act. They turned this into a total fucking fiasco when they literally could have stood up and been like, hey, what are all your names? Uh-huh. And then wrote right at the bottom of it, these guys have an exception to the mandate. Could have given them an exception card and just been like, there you go. And then if anybody had a bitch to them, they could have held up their card and been like, ha-ha. Like, it would have been the easiest solve possible. But Nazis can't do that, right? Nazis can't do that kind of shit because it affronts their desire for power, right? How dare these people stand up against me? How dare they do that? Hooray, hunka! Like, fuck Trudeau. Like, fuck Trudeau. And I want it made. I really want to make it extremely clear. I really want to make it extremely clear. Ideologically, and even in principle, I'm opposed to the Freedom Convoy. I don't support their policies. I don't support their idea. I just shut up and take the needle, you fucking bitch. Shut up and take the fucking needle, you goddamn bitch, like the rest of us. What are you, a little boy? What are you, a scared little kid? I'm not gonna go to my job because I don't want the jab. Shut up. Fucking do it. Like, put on your big boy pants and take the fucking needle like the rest of us. Like, fucking do it. What are you doing? Getting into this fucking truck, driving across Canada, causing a big ruckus, honk honk. Oh my fucking god! What a big pain in the ass. You caused a ruckus for fucking everyone because needles are scary, and I want to get back to Denny's. Like, all of that is true, but they have the right to do it. Tough shit. And that's the nature of living in a free and open society. That people who you disagree with are also allowed to protest. That's the whole point. That's how the whole thing works. And it doesn't matter if you think that, like, their solution is literally do more capitalism. That's their solution. Let's go do more capitalism. The solution is to make more business be businesses. And then business will be business. And everything will be businesses. Right? I've never once played a game of Monopoly, and I don't understand how market systems resolve, but everything needs to be more of that. Like, it's frustratingly dumb. But they're still Canadian citizens, and they still have the right to protest. Tough shit. Tough shit. Tough shit. Like, tough shit. That's the long and short of it. Like, too bad, right? Too fucking bad. I'm sorry. Like, I like if you're sitting there getting red in the face, just crunching down on it right now, just holding your breath, being like, but the vaccine works! Too bad. Too bad. Canadians have the right to protest. And the idea that right should be stripped away for any reason whatsoever, is fucking fascism. Is fucking ridiculous, absurd fascist bullshit. It's just a complete admission that you don't want to deal with the citizenry and their problems and their grievances. Well, then you shouldn't be in office. You shouldn't have power. You shouldn't be an elected official. That people have the right to protest and have their grievances heard. And if you can't fucking stand up and like just bite the bullet and come up with easy solutions, if you're so worried about your fucking like, oh, what will people say? They'll say I bent over for the convoy. They'll say that fuck off, fuck you. Like, fuck you. Tough. Too bad. Like, it was just such a goddamn easy fix. Like, that's just so fucking annoying. Such an easy fix. Like, literally. No court, though, would accept that. Occupier was driving people psychotic with no sleep. Occupy wasn't idling huge trucks to run crap heaters. No, but... yeah, Occupy was just building a city in Zuccotti Park. Like open air fires. Like come on, man. Like there was some serious shit going on in Zuccotti. Like it wasn't trucks. Fine. Right? Sure. But there were encampments. There was real shit going on in Zuccotti Park. They had built like food lines. They had built like a little society. Right? That's what made it such a threat. Was that people were starting to recognize that, oh, we can just like literally build a little society here. And they were, right? And like for every example that someone can give me about the shit that was going on in the convoy, I guarantee you can find a parallel at Occupy. I guarantee it. Like, so far it's been absolutely the case that I've been able to find a one-to-one correlation. The only correlation that I cannot find is group of semi-trucks. That's it. Like, that's it. But, like, for example, like, no sleep. Yeah, people were complaining exactly about that kind of thing about Occupy. Precisely about that thing. Right? Like, so, like, what do you think protest is for? What do you think it's for? That, why is it that every time a protest happens, we're supposed to be more critical of the protesters than the people who control the government and the military? Like, every single protest is a failure of governance. It is the government not addressing meaningfully the legitimate concerns and the legitimate complaints of its own electorate and its own citizenry. And especially if you were looking at like a fucking occupation, like Occupy lasted months. It lasted months. It was a huge amount of time. They cleared those encampments on the same day, at the same time, using help from the military and local police enforcement. Like it was systematically dismantled, right? Like it's and of course the Occupy movement was much more difficult to deal with in terms of solutions, because the solutions for the occupiers would have been stuff like create a legitimate jobs program, right? Actually do something meaningfully. Monkey writes, do you agree with Israeli babies being killed? What a joke. What a joke, dude. Here, check this out. Check this out. There's the history of what's going on, okay? How dare they fight back, right? Like, how dare they fight back from their obvious and very clear genocide that's obviously happening? Oh, but they fought back. Ridiculous. Like, fucking ridiculous. Sip for Rusk says W Stalin and then muted. Okay. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you. Monkey, how about you stop being pro-genocide, okay? Real straightforward, right? For every one baby that the Palestinians have killed, there's literally hundreds of thousands of corpses. Like, how are they fighting back? We are providing them medicine, food, clothes. Have you just not been looking at the news, my man? Obviously. Israeli-Hamas war updates. Gaza under total blockade. Refugee camp hit. What are you talking about? Deox is saying, he's just saying two wrongs don't make a right. Am I muted? What's going on? No, it's on. Two wrongs don't make a right. This is a both sides argument. That's what this is. This is, whoa, both sides. There's no fucking both sides. This is like saying if somebody was standing on your back, punching you in the back of the head, and you swung around and clipped them on the knee, that you're equally as violent as the person who's literally standing on your back. Like, do you know how many people in Gaza were killed? I mean, if we take a look at a report like this one, right? If you take a look at the historical report, which we can take a look at again just for fun, in the 40s, it's at least, it's almost 1 million people, right? It's almost 1 million people. This Sip for Russ guy, I like this guy. I mean, all caps, but like, both sides shitheads are shit-lib cowards. Correct. Simply accurate, right? So the history of the genocide, right? The history of the genocide. Here we have Zionist military forces expelled at least 750,000 Palestinians throughout the 40s, destroyed over 530 villages, and captured 78% of historic Palestine. The remaining 22% was divided into two parts, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Okay, bye-bye with your Nazi apologetics. You fucking loser. Pro-genocide, Nazi apologetics, fuck off. Bye, fuckhead. Read a book. Fucking just... Yeah, I'm literally showing you the history. Like, I'm showing you the history, and you're telling me to learn the history. Like, how stupid do you have to be? Right? Like, how stupid do you actually have to be to literally be watching the history in front of you? This is from Al Jazeera. Here's the history of the genocide. And then to say to somebody, get your facts straight. Learn history. Like, that is next level dimwittery. That is next level dumbfuckery. That is intentional stupidity to the highest possible degree. That there is no one who has ever come into my chat who has said a stupider thing than that, while literally looking at the history, telling me to learn history. Embarrassing, childish, stupid. Leave, Nazi. Leave. Brutal. Sorry, mate. I've got a don't click links policy for obvious reasons. Ugh. Yeah, there's a couple dozen dead Palestinian kids this year alone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm never going to say that the vaccine mandate was fascism. I don't care to get into that argument. Look, I got the vaccine. My reasoning... Okay, look. This is how I think about this, okay? Real straightforward, and I think it's reasonable. Is that
I think it is reasonable to be skeptical of the government and to be skeptical of corporations. I think that is a reasonable position. That's why I don't hold it against the anti-vax crowd too much. Like I'm not on this side of just like, oh, you gotta do it or else the vaccines work. Oh my god! Oh! Like I'm not like that. Why? Because I think it's reasonable to be skeptical of the government, to be skeptical of pharmaceutical corporations. They don't have our best interests in mind. Their bottom line is profit. That's what they care about. And I think that is a reasonable position and a position that you can argue from reasonably. And if somebody is to stand up and actually say, I don't trust these guys, I don't think that is an unreasonable position. And so, and in fact, that is my position, right? That is my position, is that I don't trust the government and I don't trust pharmaceutical corporations. But you know who I do trust? Workers. That's who I trust. I trust workers who work in the field and who are on the front lines. I trust the doctors. I trust the nurses. I trust the people who put their pants on and go to work and deal with the public on a face-to-face basis. I trust the people who are in these positions. I trust the medical professionals because this is their job and they are professionals. And you know what they were saying? Please take the vaccine. Please take the vaccine. And so I said straight up, you know what? If I don't take the vaccine after these working people told me to, then I am standing against the working class and I won't do that. And so I went and got the vaccine. Right? That's my entire justification and my entire thought pattern. That I have literally never seen any meaningful collection of working doctors and working nurses have this kind of vaccine skepticism. That most of the time vaccine skepticism comes from the academics and comes from this sort of like backroom thinking, right? It's not coming out of the workers. And so, trust the frontline workers, and the as if I'm going to check you. I don't buy into this pro-Nazi narrative. I don't buy into that. I'll need to see some hard evidence for that. And every single time I ask for that, you know what I never see? Evidence. So you want to convince me these guys are pro-Nazi? I'll need some hard evidence. Like, let's say, honoring a Nazi in the middle of Parliament. That would be hard evidence, right? That's something that I would definitely be along with. Ugh. Diox doing both sides. Both nations are made up of individuals. Killing individuals who happen to be Palestinians is wrong. And an issue with Zionism. Killing or kidnapping individuals who are Israelis is also wrong. So when you watched the movie Robin Hood and Robin Hood fought back against the sheriff, did you say, that was wrong what he did? When you watched Luke Skywalker blow the Death Star out of the sky, did you think to yourself, oh no, he did, he blew the, oh goodness? Probably not. Why? Because you understand how basic morality works. That if there is an evil oppressing force and you fight back against the evil oppressing force, you are on the side of good. Like that's the truth. Right? That if somebody kicked in your door and started punching you in the face, you would punch back. You would defend yourself. And if somebody said, you defended yourself, you're just as bad as the guy who kicked in your door. People would, like, I certainly would be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Shut up. Of course he should defend himself. You should be able to defend yourself. You have the right to defend yourself. The Palestinians have the right to defend themselves. And to pretend like that's not what they're doing is fucking weird. Creepy, odd, strange. Shouldn't be done. Oh yeah, the innocent Zionists. Yeah, the innocent Zionist argument. Yeah. Okay, bro. Right? Like, Guys literally walking around in the Gaza Strip, watching the genocide, voting for the electorate, right? Oh, the innocent Zionists. Won't someone please think of the innocent stormtrooper? There was an innocent stormtrooper that was standing on the ship of the Death Star. He didn't want to destroy Alderaan. He was just a working man who was working on the Death Star. The innocent stormtrooper. Fuck off. Like, fuck off. I love that this is an emerging argument. The innocent Nazi. That's the emerging argument. I'm seeing it more and more. And I'm seeing it right now. The innocent Nazi argument. That there's such a thing as an innocent Nazi. That sure, the Nazis were rounding people up and putting them in concentration camps and burning them and committing a massive war of aggression across the entire planet. Right? Sure that they murdered literally 25 million Russians, Romani Jews, right? Sure they were invading France. Sure they were going all around Europe and blowing everything up, literally inventing new technologies of war in order to carpet bomb people for the first time and roll tanks in and all that kind of stuff. But won't someone please think of the innocent Nazis? Fuck off. It's an embarrassing argument. It's an embarrassing argument. And you should be embarrassed for saying it or even thinking it. Like, there's no such thing as an innocent Nazi. Oh, man. Man. Oh. I knew talking about the Freedom Convoy would like kick off a whole vaccine conversation. Again, for clarity, and I hope that this is the position that gets widely adopted, I think it is rational to be against the government and corporations, and it makes sense that if you don't have the class consciousness of worker solidarity built in, like if you don't know any theory, if you don't know any communist theory or working class theory, right? I love how the Grees will not be there on the next map. Who are the Grees? What are you talking about? I love how the Greens will not be there on the next map. What are you talking about, bro? Straight up. And if you don't have that class consciousness built in, I can see how you could get stuck on anti-government, anti-pharmaceutical rhetoric. And you could get more skeptical of the vaccine than, be more skeptical of the vaccine than, you could be more skeptical of the harm that the vaccine would cause to you than what COVID could do to you. Right? And like it's not difficult for me to imagine a community of people who get into this mindset of COVID is a hoax and like all this kind of stuff, right? Like it's not like the media is trustworthy, you know? So I'm fairly sympathetic. Like I am sympathetic. I ostensibly come to disagree with them, right? But that doesn't change my sympathy because I do think that I do think that there's a lot of mistrust in the society. I think there's a lot of mistrust in the society, and people do not trust the government. They do not trust institutions. They don't trust the media. They don't trust these corporations. They don't trust any of this kind of stuff. So it kind of stands to reason that you'd have this sort of situation happen, right? It's going to be worse next time, right? It's going to be worse next time because now they know who each other are. Right? That the anti-vax movement that happened over COVID was like being cobbled together. Well, now it's cobbled together. Now it's together. So the next time this happens, right? Yeah, there's a next time. For sure there's a next time, dude. Like these pandemics are not going to stop. Like the universe is sending us very clear signs that we are fucking around and we are going to find out. Like there's just no two ways about it.
that we are going to get hit with something bigger and something badder and something nastier, and the next time the anti-vax crowd is going to be better organized. That's the truth. Could share the link of the Al Jazeera animation on the screen. I don't have any way to get that over on Twitch, but I mean, it's easy to find. Oh, sorry, that's not what it is. It is super easy to find, dude. Like, just straight up Palestinian history map Al Jazeera. Like, there's no way that you can't find this. Like, it's the easiest thing to find. I found it through a Google search. You can find it through a Google search. Super easy. It's going to be rare in 50 years. We won't be able to develop a vaccine in a month. Any pandemic can be solved within a month with the tech currently in development. Don't think so, bro. I think that you are falling for a pretty deadly trap, right? There's a deadly trap in that line of thinking that says that humanity is more powerful than the universe. It is not. Pretty black and white, pretty straightforwardly, right? I'm sure that there are some salesmen who are interested in selling vaccines and selling pharmaceutical stuff that will make these sorts of claims in order to sell contracts, pharmaceutical gear, all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure that there's lots of claims that will be made along those lines, but that's just capitalist salesmanship. That's the same as Elon Musk being like, the electric car is coming. It's coming this year. I'll be surprised if it's not in the self-driving car. It's coming right away. Right away, you guys. This year. Definitely this year. No, it's going to be this year for sure, though. This year, absolutely, right? It's just yeah, I'm sure. So I'm sure you're entrenched in your belief, right? You're an organic chemist. I'm sure you're entrenched in that belief. You believe that you are more powerful than God. Sure. Right? That the universe can't throw anything at humanity, that we will always overcome, right? That all we got to do is just invent a new technology, right? There's no precedent for that in human history where people have stood up and said we are more powerful than God, and then the universe fucked us over. Right? Absolutely no precedent for that whatsoever. Okay, dude. Like the universe, the forces that exist around you, the energy that created you, that spawned you, the reason, the basis of your existence. Yeah, I mean, you just don't want to acknowledge reality, but you want to pretend like you understand how reality works. I get it. Yeah, I understand, dude. This is the worship of the self. Right? You believe that you are more powerful than the forces of the universe. That's all. That's the worship of the self. It's one of the pillars of the decline of Western civilization is the worship of the self, and that's what you're doing. Is that you are pretending like what you know and what you are and what you do is more powerful than all the forces of the universe. Very straightforward, right? And it's pretty common. It's pretty common. So I'm not surprised that you fall for it. Like, humanity is fucking around, and we are going to find out. Yeah, we went from we can make vaccine very quickly to worship of yourself to not really. Like, my entire point, like, your claim, here, I'll make this simple, my man. Your claim is that we don't need to be concerned about the pandemics that are coming because we can make vaccines very quickly. Yeah, we developed a COVID vaccine in a year. Great. A year is a long time. A lot can happen in a year, my man. We developed a COVID vaccine in a year. Great. Fantastic. Right? Next time it won't be a month. That's cute. Sounds like salesmanship. Right? Just sounds like salesmanship. Right? And it's sort of predicated on the idea that we know what's coming. And we don't. Like, we really don't. Like, the next thing that comes out, the next thing that the universe is going to spit at us, the next thing that the world is going to spit at us is going to be deadlier. It's going to be crazier. It's going to be nuttier, right? Because we keep fucking around. And we're not respecting the ecosystem that we're not respecting the universe that we live in. We're not respecting our environment at all. We don't give a shit. Like, we don't give a shit. We continuously stir this cauldron pot. Like, we're continuously doing shit like this. Like, we're constantly fucking around. Constantly fucking around. And this corrosive idea, this sort of hubris, this arrogance that pretends as though, we don't need to worry about the entire forces of the universe and what it's capable of throwing at us. No, of course. I'm sure you're very confident. Right? I'm sure you're very confident. Like, what this is called, my man, is hubris. That's what this is called. You believe that you have the solution when the universe doesn't. Got it. Check. What's happening in my chat here? Eric, I just made the realization, I think the bottom line of why I can't get on board that Hamas is right for doing eye to eyes. I believe I'm a pacifist. Violence, only more violence. We should never civilians. Nice idea, Eric, but like, people will defend themselves. Like, they just will. Right? Like, and if you don't want to, like, if you want to be a pacifist and just let somebody beat the shit out of you and kill you, then that's what's going to happen. People are going to defend themselves. Like, that's all. And I mean, you're just watching like rage. Like, like the average age in Palestine is like 18 years old. Right? Like, the people who are living in Palestine it's a very young population. Something like 40% of the population is under the age of 14. Right? Like, this is not a population that's guided by, like, there isn't like an ancient scribe guiding this population. It's not like somebody is sitting there saying, "Oh, well, we must come together and find a peaceful way through," and all of this. Like, you're dealing with a community that is just fueled by total rage. Like, just fucking total rage. Right? Like, they're not writing a treatise. They're not doing any of that. Like go talk to an 18-year-old. The average age in Palestine. Go talk to an 18-year-old. And tell me, yeah, what would happen if you murdered their mother and father, their sister, their brother, they never knew their grandparents, destroyed their land, cut off their water, destroyed their food, beat them up, randomly shot citizens in front of them? What do you think would happen to the average 18-year-old? Like, come on. Like, come on, get real. Like, they're not going to be like, we need to find the people. Let us open the Quran and say, like, none of that is happening. Like, none of that is happening. This is straight up just like rage-fueled emotion. And to try to turn the onus of blame on the Palestinians or Hamas is weird. Obviously, the onus of blame is on Israel. Obviously. They're the ones who could stop this. Right? The Gazians, the Palestinians cannot stop this. Their option is whether or not they want to die quietly. That's all. That's the option that they've been given. Die quietly or go out fighting. That's their option. And many of them, unsurprisingly at all, are choosing to go out fighting. Many of them are choosing that. Should be the least surprising thing that anyone should ever see in their life. And the idea that they should die quietly, it's got to be the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life. Right? It's just got to be the strangest thing I've heard of in my life. Okay, my man. We do not support genocide apologencia in here. You're gonna come in here and be pro-genocide? Fuck off, you Nazi. Go study eugenics or something. This is a no Nazi, no pro-genocide space. Fuck off. Go away. No Nazi apologencia, no genocide apologencia. Fuck you. What are you saying? What's going on here? Jahone, good to see you. South Africans were called terrorists for fighting apartheid. Exactly. There has never been a nonviolent movement in history that has ever succeeded without the parallel threat of violent resistance if the nonviolence is ignored and are violently suppressed. Yeah. And I'm more or less of the opinion that capitalists will propagate nonviolent protest specifically to continue this kind of narrative, right? That, like, that's why you know everything about Gandhi, but you have no idea who the general was that was literally fighting the British, right? You've never heard his name. You don't know who he is. I don't even remember his name right now. Like, but there was obviously like a violent opposition to British colonialism, right? Yeah, they want to normalize that slavery condition. Sit for Rusk gets it, man. This guy gets it. Like, that's the point. The point is to normalize Nazism. That's the whole point. It's to make it so that Nazism is normal. So that when they start doing the salutes and they can start operating this way openly, right? That's their goal, is to start operating openly. So they don't need to do this clandestine shit. And they don't need to have like their newspapers be like, oh, that was an oopsie-doo. Oh, yeah, oh, wow, they couldn't possibly know that he was a Nazi. They can just be like, look at the glory and the majesty of the pure white race. Like, that's what they want. That's pretty clearly what they're looking at. Like, and they can just straight up say, get rid of all this diversity talk and just straight up just be like, we, the white race, are the powerful people and you, the non-whites, are our servants. Like, that's the goal. It's always been the fucking goal. Like, it's getting to be pretty fucking straightforward. The state religion Constantine created was not nonviolent, and Crusaders sure weren't. Yeah. What the hell is my chat on about right now? You know what? I'm just going to let them go. I'm going to let them go. Hamas official says group is open to discussions over truths with Israel. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. This is one I actually wanted to read, and we are in sort of the waning minutes, so I might take care of that. No, Israel is not a democracy. It's from Ilan Pop from the Jacobin. Israel is not only a democracy in the middle, is not the only democracy in the Middle East. In fact, it's not a democracy at all. In the eyes of many Israelis and their supporters worldwide, even those who might criticize some of its policies, Israel is, at the end of the day, a benign democratic state seeking peace with its neighbors and guaranteeing equality to all its citizens. Those who do criticize Israel assume that if anything went wrong in this democracy, then it was due to the 1967 war. In this view, the war corrupted an honest and hardworking society by offering easy money in the occupied territories, allowing messianic groups to enter Israeli politics, and above all else, turning Israel into an occupying and oppressive entity in the new territories. The myth that democratic Israel ran into trouble in 1967, but still remained democratic, is even propagated by some notable Palestinian and pro-Palestinian scholars, but it has no historical foundation. Before 1967, Israel definitely could not have been depicted as a democracy. As we have seen in previous chapters, the state subjected 1/5 of its citizenship to military rule, based on draconian British mandatory emergency regulations that denied the Palestinians any basic human or civil rights. Local military governors were the absolute rulers of the lives of these citizens. They could devise special laws for them, destroy their houses and livelihoods, and send them to jail whenever they felt like it. Only in the late 1950s did a strong Jewish opposition to these abuses emerge, which eventually eased the pressure on the Palestinian citizens. For the Palestinians who lived in pre-war Israel and those who lived in post-1967 West Bank and the Gaza Strip, this regime allowed even the lowest-ranking soldier in the IDF to rule and ruin their lives. They were helpless if such a soldier or his unit or commander decided to demolish their homes, or hold them for hours at a checkpoint, or incarcerate them without trial. There was nothing they could do. At every moment, from 1948 until today, there has been some group of Palestinians undergoing such an experience. The first group to suffer under such a yoke was the Palestinian minority inside Israel. It began in the first 2 years of statehood when they were pushed into ghettos, such as the Haifa Palestinian community living on the Caramel Mountain, or expelled from the towns they had inhabited for decades, such as Safad. In the case of Istad, the whole population was expelled to the Gaza Strip. In the countryside, the situation was even worse. The various kibbutz movements coveted Palestinian villages on fertile land. This included the socialist Kibbutzim, Hashomer Hazer, which was allegedly committed to binational solidarity. Long after the fighting of 1948 had subsided, villagers in Gabsiye, Ikrut, Bimrum, Katad, Zaytan, and many others were tricked into leaving their homes for a period of 2 weeks, the army claiming it needed their lands for training, only to find out on their return that their villages had been wiped out or handed to someone else. This state of military terror is exemplified by the Kafr Qasim massacre of October 1956, when, on the eve of the Sinai operation, 49 Palestinian citizens were killed by the Israeli army. The authorities alleged that they were late returning home from work in the fields when a curfew had been imposed on the villages. This was not the real reason, however. Later proofs show that Israel had seriously considered the expulsion of Palestinians from the whole area, called the Wadi Ara and the Triangle, in which the village sat. These two areas, the first a valley connecting Afula in the east and Hadira on the Mediterranean coast, the second expanding the eastern hinterland of Jerusalem, were annexed to Israel under the terms of the 1949 Armistice Agreement with Jordan. As we have seen, additional territory was always welcomed by Israel, but an increase in the Palestinian population was not. Thus, at every juncture, when the State of Israel expanded, it looked for ways to restrict the Palestinian population in the recently annexed areas. Operation Haferfurt, Mole, was the code name of a set of proposals for the expulsion of Palestinians when a new war broke out with the Arab world. Many scholars today now think that the 1956 massacre was a practice run to see if the people in the area could be intimidated to leave. The perpetrators of the massacre were brought to trial thanks to the diligence and tenacity of two members of the Knesset, Tawak Tubby from the Communist Party and Latif Dori of the left Zionist party, Mapam. However, the commanders responsible for the area and the unfit itself that committed the crime were let off very lightly, receiving merely small fines. This was further proof that the army was allowed to get away with murder in the occupied territories. Systematic cruelty does not only show its face in a major event like a massacre. The worst atrocities can also be found in the regime's daily mundane presence. Palestinians in Israel still do not talk much about that pre-1967 period, and the documents of that time do not reveal the full picture. Surprisingly, it is in poetry that we find an indication of what it was like to live under military rule. Nathan Alterman was one of the most famous and important poets of his generation. He had a weekly column called The Seventh Column, in which he commented on events he had read or heard about. Sometimes he would omit details about the date or even the location of the event, but would give the readers just enough information to understand what he was referring to. He often expressed his attacks in poetic form. The news appeared briefly for 2 days and disappeared, and no one seemed to care, and no one seems to know. In the faraway village of al-Fahem, children, should I say citizens of the state, played in the mud, and one of them seemed suspicious to one of our brave soldiers who shouted at him, "Stop! An order is an order. An order is an order," but the foolish boy did not stand. He ran away. So our brave soldier shot. No wonder, and hit and killed the boy. And no one talked about it. On one occasion, he wrote a poem about 2 Palestinian citizens who were shot in Wadi Ara. In another instance, he told the story of a very ill Palestinian woman who was expelled with her 2 children, aged 3 and 6, with no explanation, and sent across the River Jordan. When she tried to return, she and her children were arrested and put into a Nazareth jail. Alterman hoped that his poem about the mother would move hearts and minds, or at least elicit some official response. However, he wrote a week later, and this writer assumed wrongly that either the story would be denied or explained, but nothing. Not a word. There is further evidence that Israel was not a democracy prior to 1967. The state pursued a shoot-to-kill policy towards refugees trying to retrieve their land, crops, and husbandry, and stage a colonial war to topple Nasser's regime in Egypt. Its security forces were also trigger-happy, killing more than 50 Palestinian citizens during the period from 1948 to 1967. The litmus test of any democracy is the level of tolerance it is willing to extend towards the minorities living in it. In this respect, Israel falls far short of being a true democracy. For example, after the new territorial gains saw several laws were passed ensuring a superior position for the majority, the laws governing citizenship, the laws concerning land ownership, and most important of all, the law of return. The latter grants automatic citizenship to every Jew in the world, wherever he or she was born. This law in particular is a flagrantly undemocratic one, for it was accompanied by a total rejection of the Palestinian right of return, recognized internationally by the UN General Assembly Resolution 194 of 1948. This rejection refuses to allow the Palestinian citizens of Israel to unite with their immediate families or those who were expelled in 1948. Denying people the right to return to their homeland, and at the same time offering this right to others who have no connection to the land, is a model of undemocratic practice. Adding to this was a further layering of denial of the rights of the Palestinian people. Almost every discrimination against the Palestinian citizens of Israel is justified by the fact that they do not serve in the army. The association between democratic rights and military duties is better understood if we revisit the formative years in which Israeli policymakers were trying to make up their minds about how to treat 1/5 of the population. Their assumption was that Palestinian citizens did not want to join the army anyway, and that assumed refusal in turn justified the discriminatory policy against them. This was put to the test in 1954, when the Israeli Ministry of Defense decided to call up those Palestinian citizens eligible for conscription to serve in the army. The Secret Service assured the government that there would be a widespread rejection of the call-up. To their great surprise, all those summoned went to the recruiting office, with the blessing of the Communist Party, the biggest and most important political force in the community at the time. The Secret Service later explained that the main reason was the teenagers' boredom with life in the countryside and their desire for some action and adventure. Notwithstanding this episode, the Ministry of Defense continued to peddle a narrative that depicted the Palestinian community as unwilling to serve in the military. Inevitably, in time, the Palestinians did indeed turn against the Israeli army, who had become their perpetual oppressors, but the government's exploitation of this as a pretext for discrimination casts huge doubt on the state's pretense to being a democracy. If you are a Palestinian citizen and you did not serve in the army, your rights to government assistance as a worker, student, parent, or as part of a couple are severely restricted. This affects housing in particular, as well as employment, where 70% of all Israeli industry is considered to be security sensitive and therefore closed to these citizens as a place to find work. The underlying assumption of the Ministry of Defense was not only that Palestinians do not wish to serve, but that they are potentially an enemy who cannot be trusted. The problem with this argument is that in all major wars between Israel and the Arab world, the Palestinian minority did not behave as expected. They did not form a fifth column or rise up against the regime. This, however, did not help them. To this day, they are seen as a demographic problem that has to be solved. The only consolation is that still today, most Israeli politicians do not believe that the way to solve the problem is by the transfer or expulsion of the Palestinians, at least not in peacetime. The claim to being a democracy is also questionable when one examines the budgetary policy surrounding the land question. Since 1948, Palestinian local councils and municipalities have received far less funding than their Jewish counterparts. The shortage of land, coupled with a scarcity of employment opportunities, creates an abnormal socioeconomic reality. For example, the most affluent Palestinian community, the village of Mi'ilya in the Upper Galilee, is still worse off than the poorest Jewish development town of the Negev. In 2011, the Jerusalem Post reported that average Jewish income was 40% to 60% higher than average Arab income between the years 1997 to 2009. Today, more than 90% of the land is owned by the Jewish National Fund. Landowners are not allowed to engage in transactions with non-Jewish citizens, and public land is prioritized for the use of national projects, which means that new Jewish settlements are being built, while there are hardly any new Palestinian settlements. Thus, the biggest Palestinian city, Nazareth, despite the tripling of its population since 1948, has not expanded 1 square kilometer, whereas the development town built above it, Upper Nazareth, has tripled in size on land expropriated from Palestinian landowners. I'm just going to remind everybody that Nazareth was Jesus' hometown, just a reminder. Further example of this policy can be found in Palestinian villages throughout Galilee, revealing the same story. How have they been downsized by 40%, sometimes 60%, since 1948, and how new Jewish settlements have been built on expropriated land. Elsewhere, this has initiated full-blown attempts at Judaization. After 1967, the Israeli government became concerned about the lack of Jews living in the north and south side of the state, and so planned to increase the population in those areas. Such a demographic change necessitated the confiscation of Palestinian land for the building of Jewish settlements. Worse was the exclusion of Palestinian citizens from these settlements. This blunt violation of a citizen's right to live wherever he or she wishes continues today, and all efforts by human rights NGOs in Israel to challenge this apartheid have so far ended in total failure. The Supreme Court in Israel has only been able to question the legality of this policy in a few individual cases, but not in principle. Imagine if in the United Kingdom or the United States, Jewish citizens, or Catholics for that matter, were barred by law from living in certain villages, neighborhoods, or maybe whole towns. How can such a situation be reconciled with the notion of democracy? Thus, given its attitudes towards two Palestinian groups, the refugees and the community in Israel, the Jewish state cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, be assumed to be a democracy. But the most obvious challenge to that assumption is the ruthless Israeli attitude towards a third Palestinian group, those who have lived under its direct and indirect rule since 1967, in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. From the legal infrastructure put in place at the onset of the war, through the unquestioned absolute power of the military inside the West Bank and outside the Gaza Strip, to the humiliation of millions of Palestinians as a daily routine, the only democracy in the Middle East behaves as a dictatorship of the worst kind. The main Israeli response, diplomatic and academic, to the latter accusation is that all of these measures are temporary. They will change if the Palestinians, wherever they are, behave better. But if one researches, not to mention lives in the occupied territories, one will understand how ridiculous these arguments are. Israeli policymakers, as we have seen, are determined to keep the occupation alive for so long as the Jewish state remains intact. It is part of what the Israel political system regards as the status quo, which is always better than any change. Israel will control most of Palestine, and, since it will always include a substantial Palestinian population, this can only be done by non-democratic means. In addition, despite all the evidence to the contrary, the Israeli state claims that the occupation is an enlightened one. The myth here is that Israel came with good intentions to conduct a benevolent occupation, but was forced to take a tougher attitude because of the Palestinian violence. In 1967, the government treated the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as a natural part of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, and this attitude has continued ever since. When you look at the debate between the right and left-wing parties in Israel on this issue, their disagreements have been about how to achieve this goal, not about its validity. Among the wider public, however, there was a genuine debate between what one might call the Redeemers and the Custodians. The Redeemers believed Israel had recovered the ancient heart of its homeland and could not survive in the future without it. In contrast, the Custodians argued that the territory should be exchanged for peace with Jordan in the case of the West Bank and Egypt in the case of the Gaza Strip. However, this public debate had little impact on the way the principal policymakers were figuring out how to rule the occupied territories. The worst part of this supposed enlightened occupation has been the government's methods for managing the territories. At first, the area was divided into Arab and potential Jewish spaces. Those areas densely populated with Palestinians became autonomous, run by local collaborators under a military rule. This regime was only replaced with a civil administration in 1981. The other areas, the Jewish spaces, were colonized with Jewish settlements and military bases. This policy was intended to leave the population both in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip in disconnected enclaves, with neither green spaces nor any possibility for urban expansion. Things only got worse when very soon after the occupation, Gush Emunim started settling in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, claiming to be following a biblical map of colonization rather than the governmental one. As they penetrated the densely populated Palestinian areas, the space left for the locals was shrunk even further. What every colonization project primarily needs is land. In the occupied territories, this was achieved only through the massive expropriation of land, deporting people from where they had lived for generations, and confining them in enclaves with difficult habitats. When you fly over the West Bank, you can see clearly the cartographic results of this policy. Belts of settlements that divide the land and carve the Palestinian communities into small, isolated, and disconnected communities. The Judaization belts separate villages from villages from towns, and sometimes bisect a single village. This is what scholars call a geography of disaster, not least since these policies turned out to be an ecological disaster as well, drying up water sources and ruining some of the most beautiful parts of the Palestinian landscape. Moreover, the settlements become hotbeds in which Jewish extremism grew uncontrollably, the principal victim of which were the Palestinians. Thus, the settlement at Efrat has ruined the World Heritage Site of the Walaji Valley near Bethlehem, and the village of Jaffne near Ramallah, which was famous for its freshwater canals, lost its identity as a tourist attraction. These are just two small examples out of hundreds of similar cases. House demolition is not a new phenomenon in Palestine. As with many of the more barbaric methods of collective punishment used by Israel since 1948, it was first conceived and exercised by the British Mandatory Government during the Great Arab Revolt of 1936-39. This was the first Palestinian uprising against the pro-Zionist policy of the British Mandate, and it took the British Army 3 years to quell it. In the process, they demolished around 2,000 houses during the various collective punishments meted out to the local population. Israel demolished houses from almost the first day of its military occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The army blew up hundreds of homes every year in response to various acts undertaken by individual family members, from minor violations of military rule to participation in violent acts against the occupation. The Israelis were quick to send their bulldozers to wipe out not only a physical building, but also a focus of life and existence. In the greater Jerusalem area, as inside Israel, demolition was also a punishment for the unlicensed extension of an existing house or the failure to pay bills. Another form of collective punishment that has recently returned to the Israeli repertoire is that of blocking up houses. Imagine that all the doors and windows in your house are blocked by cement, mortar, and stones so that you can't get back in or retrieve anything you failed to take out in time. I've looked hard in my history books to find another example, but found no evidence of such a callous measure being practiced elsewhere. Finally, under the enlightened occupation, settlers have been allowed to form vigilante gangs to harass people and destroy their property. These gangs have changed their approach over the years. During the 1980s, they used actual terror, from wounding Palestinian leaders, one of them lost his legs in such an attack, to contemplating blowing up the mosques on Haram al-Sharif in Jerusalem. In this century, they have engaged in the daily harassment of Palestinians, uprooting their trees, destroying their yields, and shooting randomly at their homes and vehicles. Since 2000, there have been at least 100 such attacks reported per month in such areas as Hebron, where the 500 settlers, with the silent collaboration of the Israeli army, harassed the locals living nearby in an even more brutal way. From the very beginning of the occupation then, the Palestinians were given two options: accept the reality of permanent incarceration in a mega prison for a very long time, or risk the might of the strongest army in the Middle East. When the Palestinians did resist, as they did in 1987, 2000, 2006, 2012, 2014, and 16, they were targeted as soldiers and units of a conventional army. Thus, villages and towns were bombed as if they were military bases, and the unarmed civilian population was shot as if it was an army on the battlefield. Today, we know too much about life under occupation, before and after Oslo, to take seriously the claim that non-resistance will ensure less oppression. The arrests without trial, as experienced by so many over the years, the demolition of thousands of houses, the killing and wounding of the innocent, the drainage of water wells. These are all testimony to one of the harshest contemporary regimes of our times. Amnesty International annually documents, in a very comprehensive way, the nature of the occupation. The following is from their 2015 report. In the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Israeli forces committed unlawful killings of Palestinian civilians, including children, and detained thousands of Palestinians who protest against or otherwise opposed Israel's continuing military occupation, holding hundreds in administrative detention. Torture and other ill treatment remained rife and were committed with impunity. The authorities continued to promote illegal settlements in the West Bank and severely restricted Palestinians' freedom of movement, further tightening restrictions amid an escalation of violence from October, which included attacks on Israeli civilians by Palestinians and apparent extrajudicial executions by Israeli forces. Israeli settlers in the West Bank attacked Palestinians and their property with virtual impunity. The Gaza Strip remained under an Israeli military blockade that imposed collective punishment on its inhabitants. The authorities continued to demolish Palestinian homes in the West Bank and inside Israel, particularly in Bedouin villages in the Negev-Naqab region, forcibly evicting their residents. Let's take this in stages. Firstly, assassinations, what Amnesty's report calls unlawful killings. About 15,000 Palestinians have been killed unlawfully by Israel since 1967, among them 2,000 children. Another feature of the enlightened occupation is imprisonment without trial. Every fifth Palestinian in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip has undergone such an experience. It is interesting to compare this Israeli practice with similar American policies in the past and the present, as critics of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement claim that the U.S. practices are far worse. In fact, the worst American example was the imprisonment without trial of 100,000 Japanese citizens during World War II, with 30,000 later detained under the so-called War on Terror. Neither of these numbers comes even close to the number of Palestinians who have experienced such a process, including the very young, the old, as well as the long-term incarcerated. Arrest without trial is a traumatic experience. Not knowing the charges against you, having no contact with a lawyer, and hardly any contact with your family are only some of the concerns that will affect you as a prisoner. More brutally, many of these arrests are used as means to pressure people into collaboration. Spreading rumors or shaming people for their alleged or real sexual orientation are also frequently used as methods for leveraging complicity. As for torture, the reliable website Middle East Monitor published a harrowing article describing the 200 methods used by Israelis to torture Palestinians. The list is based on a UN report and a report from the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem. Among the other methods, it includes beatings, chaining prisoners to doors or chairs for hours, pouring cold and hot water on them, pulling fingers apart, and twisting testicles. Israel is not a democracy. What we must challenge here, therefore, is not only Israel's claim to be maintaining an enlightened occupation, but also its pretense to being a democracy. Such behavior towards millions of people under its rule gives the lie to such political chicanery. However, although large sections of civil societies throughout the world deny Israel its pretense to democracy, their political elites, for a variety of reasons, still treat it as a member of the exclusive club of democratic states. In many ways, the popularity of the BDS movement reflects the frustrations of these societies with their government's policies towards Israel. For most Israelis, these counter-arguments are irrelevant at best and malicious at worst. The Israeli state clings to the view that it is a benevolent occupier. The argument for enlightened occupation proposes that according to the average Jewish citizen in Israel, the Palestinians are much better off under occupation, and they have no reason in the world to resist it, let alone by force. If you are a non-critical supporter of Israel abroad, you accept these assumptions as well. There are, however, sections of Israeli society that do recognize the validity of some of the claims made here. In the 1990s, with various degrees of conviction, a significant number of Jewish academics, journalists, and artists voiced their doubts about the definition of Israel as a democracy. It takes some courage to challenge the foundational myths of one's own society and state. This is why quite a few of them later retreated from this brave position and returned to towing the general line. Nevertheless, for a while during the last decade of the last century, they produced works that challenged the assumption of a democratic Israel. They portrayed Israel as belonging to a different community, that of the non-democratic nations. One of them, the geographer Oren Yitovchil from Ben-Gurion University, depicted Israel as an ethnocracy, a regime governing a mixed ethnic state with a legal and formal preference for one ethnic group over all the others. Others went further, labeling Israel as an apartheid state or a settler colonial state. In short, whatever description these critical scholars offered, democracy was not among them. It's always nice to read something like that, you know? It's nice to get other people's words in your mouth. It's nice to say them. It's nice to formulate them. It's nice to do. I hope you guys are having a fine conversation in the chat. Sorry I haven't been following along. I hope it continues. I hope you guys have a beautiful night. We here have reached the end of today's stream on the Canadian Commie. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for being here. You guys are what really makes this worthwhile, what really makes this exciting and interesting, and really makes it so that I always want to hit that record button. Thank you guys for being here. Be sure to like, be sure to share, be sure to subscribe, hit those bells, hit those whistles, tell people I exist. Think about donating a little bit of money if you've got a little money jangling around in your pocket, right? Maybe you've come into something. But more importantly than that, do tell somebody I exist. And always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are doing everything they can to convince you you're not. So you'll just stay the good little commodity that they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck.